Good evening. Tonight's tale concerns a most troubling notion that the quiet skies above us may not be quite so quiet after all. For years we comforted ourselves with the idea that we were alone until something out there suggested otherwise. Before we proceed, an important clarification. This broadcast was created with the assistance of artificial intelligence. While the voices are synthetic, the story was written and directed by a human mind. This production makes use of the names of real historical figures, yet it in no way reflects their words, deeds, or actions. Any other resemblance to actual persons, living or deceased, remains purely coincidental. Our story will begin in a moment. And remember, uninvited guests often choose the darkest nights to visit. Enjoy the show.
What you are about to hear is a historical record. Between June of 1947 and January of 1948, radio stations across the United States documented a series of events that would forever alter the course of human history. These broadcasts, preserved through extraordinary circumstances, represent the final coordinated communications of an organized civilization. The recordings begin with routine news reports, curious anomalies, scientific puzzles, reports that were dismissed, denied, explained away by official sources. But as the months progressed, the reports became impossible to ignore. The denials became increasingly difficult to maintain. And by January of 1948, the truth could no longer be concealed. These broadcasts capture that progression. From curiosity to concern, from concern to crisis, from crisis to a conclusion that few could have imagined possible. The voices you will hear are those of professional journalists, government officials, scientists, military personnel, and ordinary citizens, all attempting to comprehend events that challenged every assumption about humanity's place in the universe. They documented what they witnessed. They broadcast until their equipment failed. They maintained their duty to inform the public, even as the world they knew came to an end. What follows is presented without editorial comment. The broadcasts speak for themselves. We begin in June of 1947 in the American Southwest with reports of unusual radio interference. At that time, no one could have known what those first signals truly meant. The broadcasts begin now.
Good evening. This is station WXYZ, your voice of the Southwest, broadcasting on 1230 kilocycles. You're listening to the Evening News Hour with Sam Spade.
Good evening to our listeners across the Southwest. Tonight from our studios in Albuquerque, we bring you the news of Saturday, June 14th, 1947. In Washington, Congress debates the Taft-Hartley labor bill as President Truman considers his response. Overseas, Secretary of State Marshall outlines his plan for European recovery. And locally, the Albuquerque Chamber of Commerce reports record attendance at this weekend's trade exposition. But tonight, we begin with a curious story that's been developing across our listening area over the past 72 hours. Radio stations from El Paso to Flagstaff have reported unusual interference on their broadcast frequencies. Interference that engineers say doesn't match any known natural or man-made source. We now go to our correspondent, Will Riker, who has been investigating these reports. Mr. Riker filed this report earlier today from our downtown studios.
Thank you. What began Thursday evening as isolated reports from a handful of stations has now expanded to include more than 24 broadcasters across 4 states. Station engineers describe the phenomenon in remarkably similar terms. Organized harmonic tones appearing simultaneously on multiple frequencies, tones that seem to follow a rhythmic pattern unlike anything in normal broadcast interference. I spoke with Rick Blaine, chief engineer at KOB here in Albuquerque, who first detected the anomaly Thursday night during his regular equipment check.
It came through clear as a bell around 9:45 p.m. Started as a low hum, maybe 200 hertz, then climbed in pitch following what sounded like a musical scale almost. Held each tone for exactly 3 seconds, then moved to the next. Went on for maybe 2 minutes, then stopped just as suddenly as it started.
Mr. Blaine tells me he's worked in radio for 18 years and has never encountered anything quite like this pattern.
Your typical interference. You're talking about atmospherics, electrical storms, maybe arc discharge from power lines. This wasn't that. This was deliberate. The spacing was too precise. The frequency progression too clean. And here's the thing that really gets me. When I called over to KGGM to see if they were having trouble, they'd logged the exact same thing. same time, same pattern.
The Federal Communications Commission Regional Office confirms they've received reports from stations throughout New Mexico, Arizona, western Texas, and southern Colorado. An FCC spokesman told me they're investigating, though he declined to speculate on possible causes. When pressed, he suggested the interference might be related to unusual atmospheric conditions. The Weather Bureau office here in Albuquerque has been examining that possibility. Meteorologist John Hendricks notes that while unusual radio propagation can occur during certain weather patterns, the conditions this week have been, in his words, unremarkable. What makes this story particularly intriguing is a separate set of reports from amateur astronomers. Several observers have noted unusual light reflections at very high altitude, reflections that appeared to move in a coordinated pattern Thursday and Friday evenings. Whether there's any connection to the radio interference remains unclear, but the timing has caught the attention of researchers. Back to you in the studio.
Thank you, Will. We should note that the FCC emphasizes these reports are preliminary and that investigators are still gathering data. The Commission expects to issue a more detailed statement early next week. To discuss the technical aspects of this phenomenon, we've arranged a telephone connection with Dr. David Levinson, a visiting astronomer from the Royal Observatory at Greenwich, who happens to be lecturing this week at the University of New Mexico. Dr. Levinson, thank you for joining us this evening.
Happy to be here, though I should say my expertise is rather more in celestial mechanics than radio engineering.
Understood, but you've been following these reports with interest, I'm told.
Quite so, yes. The correlation between the radio anomalies and the optical observations is, well, it's suggestive, though I'd caution against drawing firm conclusions at this stage. What I can say is that the light phenomena described by amateur observers don't fit comfortably with known atmospheric effects.
How so?
The reported altitude is rather too high for conventional aircraft, and the motion patterns, if accurately described, would be atypical of any weather-related reflection. One observer I spoke with this afternoon noted what he called a triangular arrangement of lights moving in formation. That suggests something with, shall we say, intentional coordination rather than random atmospheric scattering.
Are you suggesting these could be related to the experimental aircraft we've been hearing about? The high-altitude research programs?
It's certainly possible. The Army Air Forces have been testing all manner of new equipment since the war ended. But the timing is curious, isn't it? Radio interference on multiple frequencies across hundreds of miles, occurring simultaneously with unusual aerial phenomena. If it's a test program, it's a rather extensive one.
What would be your recommendation for observers who might witness these phenomena?
Document everything, I should think. Precise times, duration, apparent altitude, and direction. The more systematic observations we can gather, the better chance we have of determining what we're actually looking at. Science progresses through careful observation and measurement, not speculation.
Dr. Levinson, we appreciate your time this evening.
My pleasure. Do keep us informed if additional reports come in.
We certainly will. That was Dr. David Levinson of the Royal Observatory at Greenwich, currently visiting the University of New Mexico. The FCC asks that any stations or amateur radio operators who detect similar interference report it immediately to their regional office with detailed logs of time, frequency, and duration. The Commission emphasizes there's no cause for public concern, but they are treating these reports with appropriate seriousness. We'll continue to follow this story as more information becomes available. In other news tonight, the Albuquerque City Council approved funding for street repairs along Central Avenue. But first, we pause for station identification and a word from our sponsors. This is WXYZ, 1230 kilocycles, Albuquerque.
You've been listening to the Evening News with Sam Spade. Stay tuned for our Saturday evening drama presentation coming up next.
Attention, college graduates. Black Mesa Research Facility in New Mexico is seeking qualified personnel in physics, engineering, and advanced mathematics, competitive salary, government housing, and access to the most advanced laboratory equipment in the Western Hemisphere. Security clearance required. Apply in writing to Black Mesa Personnel Office, Post Office Box 47, Los Alamos, New Mexico. Black Mesa Research, advancing science for a better tomorrow.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight we begin a tale in 4 parts. A story I call The House on Blackwood Hill. Now, I'm going to tell you this is fiction. A ghost story. Entertainment for your Saturday evening. A kind of tale best told by lamplight, with the curtains drawn and the doors locked tight. Our story begins, as so many do, with an inheritance. Dr. Edward Marsh, professor of anthropology at Miskatonic University, received word on a gray October morning. 3 years ago, his uncle Silas had inherited a Victorian house atop Blackwood Hill, some 40 miles from any proper town. Silas had lived there alone for those 3 years until his death last week. Now the property passed to Edward, along with a handwritten note his uncle had left with the family attorney. The note said only this: Edward, I beg you, do not come here. Sell the property sight unseen. Never set foot on Blackwood Hill. Naturally, Edward came at once. The house revealed itself through morning fog like a tombstone emerging from the mist. 3 stories of weathered gray wood, tower rooms at odd angles, windows that seemed to watch his approach with the blank stare of a corpse. Edward had studied architecture, and something about the structure troubled him immediately. The proportions were wrong. Doors hung slightly off-center. The tower listed to one side as though the foundation had shifted. Windows appeared at intervals that made no sense for the rooms they should serve. It was as though whoever built the house had been mad, or had been following instructions from someone who was. Inside, the wrongness intensified. Hallways that should have been parallel weren't. Corners didn't meet at right angles. Standing in the center of the parlor, Edward felt a peculiar sensation, as though the room itself was watching him, waiting to see what he would do. The air was cold, not the ordinary cold of an unheated house, but a bone-deep chill that seemed to seep up from the floorboards. And underneath everything, there was a smell, faint but unmistakable, the smell of earth, of graves. He found his uncle's journal in the study. Silas had been meticulous. 3 years of observations, dated entries, sketches, and measurements. The first entry was mundane enough. Excitement about the inheritance, plans for restoration. But by the 3rd week, the tone had changed. The sounds began last night. Footsteps in the rooms above me, though I am the only living soul in this house. Not the settling of old wood. Footsteps, the measured tread of something pacing back and forth, as though waiting for something. Edward read on. His uncle had documented it all. Doors that locked themselves from the inside. Objects moved during the night. His own belongings rearranged by unseen hands. And always, the footsteps above. But there was something else. Something that appeared in nearly every entry after the first month. At 3:17 a.m. each night, every sound in the house ceased. Complete silence for exactly 47 seconds. The clock stopped ticking. The wind made no sound against the windows. Even Silas's own heartbeat seemed muffled, distant, as though he was sinking underwater. And in that silence, he could hear something else. A voice, he wrote, or perhaps many voices, whispering words in a language he didn't recognize. Words that made his teeth ache and his eyes water. The journal's final weeks grew increasingly desperate. Silas had begun sleeping during the day, barricading himself in his room at night. He wrote of shadows that moved when nothing cast them, of reflections in mirrors that didn't quite match his movements, of waking to find himself standing in rooms he didn't remember entering, his hands covered in dirt. The last entry was dated 3 days before his death. I know what this house is now, Edward. I know why the locals avoid Blackwood Hill, why the indigenous people who lived here before us called it the Hollow Place. This house wasn't built for the living. It was built for something else, something that was here before the house, something that will be here long after the house is gone. I only pray it lets me leave this world before I discover what it truly wants. Edward closed the journal, looked at his watch. 8:37 p.m. He had 6 hours and 40 minutes until 3:17 a.m. He told himself he would leave in the morning. He told himself his uncle had been ill, that isolation and age had done something to the old man's mind. He told himself many things, but he also took his uncle's journal upstairs to the bedroom, locked the door with a heavy iron bolt, and sat in the chair by the window with a kerosene lamp burning bright, waiting. Because Dr. Edward Marsh was, above all else, a scientist. And scientists investigate, even when perhaps they should not. That's where we leave Dr. Marsh tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Sitting in a locked room, waiting for 3:17 a.m., waiting to see if the silence comes. We shall return to his story next week. Until then, I bid you good evening. And should you find yourself in an old house, in a place the locals avoid, in a room where the shadows seem to watch you, well, perhaps it's best not to wait for midnight. Good night.
Smart investors are looking west. LV426 Land Company offers prime acreage in Nevada's high desert, mineral rights included. Government surveys show promising geological formations. Buy now before prices rise. Parcels from 40 acres to full sections available. Financing available for qualified buyers. LV426 Land. Stake your claim in America's future. Write to Post Office Box 426, Las Vegas, Nevada.
We interrupt this program for a special bulletin. This is WXYZ, Albuquerque.
Good morning. This is Dixon Steele with a special report from our newsroom. The Army Air Forces has confirmed that multiple radar installations across the southwestern United States tracked unidentified returns during the overnight hours. The objects appeared on radar screens at altitudes estimated between 30,000 and 50,000 feet, moving at speeds that military officials describe as, quote, inconsistent with known aircraft performance, end quote. According to a statement released 1 hour ago from the Pentagon, radar operators at installations in New Mexico, Arizona, and California logged the returns beginning at approximately 11:30 p.m. Mountain War Time. The objects would appear for several minutes, then vanish from screens, only to reappear minutes later at different locations. A spokesman for the Army Air Forces emphasized that the service is treating this as a technical matter, not a security concern. The statement reads, quote, radar is a relatively new technology, and we continue to discover its limitations. These transient returns are most likely the result of equipment irregularities or unusual atmospheric conditions. We have no evidence of any unauthorized aircraft in American airspace, end quote. The spokesman declined to answer questions about whether the radar contacts might be related to the radio interference reported earlier this month, saying only that, quote, all available data is being analyzed by appropriate technical personnel, end quote. A full briefing is scheduled for 4 o'clock this afternoon at the Pentagon. We will carry that briefing live as part of our regular evening news program. For now, we return you to your regularly scheduled programming. This is Dixon Steele. Stay tuned to WXYZ for continuing coverage.
Good evening. This is Sam Spade with the evening news for Thursday, June 26, 1947. Tonight we lead with this afternoon's Pentagon briefing on the radar contacts detected across the Southwest last evening. What began as a technical curiosity this morning has developed into something rather more substantial, with civilian pilots now coming forward to corroborate the military's radar observations. We go first to the briefing itself. where Brigadier General Nathan Jessup addressed reporters.
Gentlemen, I'll make a brief statement, then take your questions. Between the hours of 2300 yesterday and 0300 this morning, radar installations at 6 Army Air Forces facilities recorded what we are calling transient unidentified returns. These contacts appeared at high altitude, exhibited unusual movement characteristics, and could not be immediately correlated with known aircraft or atmospheric phenomena. I want to be clear about what we know and what we don't know. We know the radar detected something. We know the returns appeared solid and were tracked by multiple installations simultaneously. What we don't know is the nature or origin of these contacts. Our preliminary assessment is that we are dealing with equipment sensitivity issues. Radar technology, as you're aware, was developed rapidly during the war. Much of our equipment is still being calibrated. We've seen false returns before from unusual weather conditions, from flocks of birds at altitude, even from temperature inversions in the upper atmosphere. That said, we are investigating every possibility with appropriate thoroughness. At this time, we have no evidence of any threat to national security.
The general took questions for 20 minutes, but provided little additional detail. He emphasized multiple times that the Army Air Forces considers this a technical matter requiring investigation, not a crisis requiring alarm. But this afternoon brought a new dimension to the story. The Civil Aeronautics Administration confirmed it has received 17 reports from civilian pilots describing unusual sightings at high altitude over the past 48 hours. We spoke by telephone with Russell Case, a crop duster pilot based in Roswell, New Mexico, who filed a report with the CAA this morning.
I've been flying for 14 years, got over 9,000 hours in the air. I know what I'm looking at up there. Yesterday afternoon, I was at about 8,000 feet, working a section north of town, when I saw something above me, way above me, maybe 30 or 40,000 feet. It looked like a distortion, you know, like when heat comes off the desert and makes the air shimmer. But this was a disc shape, maybe 30 feet across, and it was moving, not fast exactly, but deliberate, crossed from east to west in maybe 2 minutes, then just vanished. Didn't descend, didn't climb, just wasn't there anymore.
Mr. Case, could this have been another aircraft? Perhaps something you're not familiar with.
I've seen every kind of plane the Air Forces fly. This wasn't that. No wings, no tail, no exhaust trail. And the altitude, you understand, nothing we've got operates routinely at 40,000 feet. The new jets maybe, but they don't hover, and they sure don't shimmer like heat distortion.
The CAA says it's reviewing all pilot reports, but has not issued any flight advisories or warnings. A spokesman told us the agency is, quote, coordinating with military authorities to determine if these observations have any bearing on aviation safety, end quote. To help us understand what might account for these sightings, we're joined now by Professor Michael Armstrong, who teaches physics at the University of New Mexico. Professor Armstrong, thank you for joining us.
Happy to be here, though I should say at the outset I'm as puzzled by these reports as anyone.
The military suggests equipment irregularities or atmospheric effects. Do those explanations satisfy you?
They're reasonable starting points. Radar works by bouncing radio waves off objects and measuring the return signal. In theory, anything that reflects radio waves could appear on a radar screen. Large formations of birds have been known to create returns. Weather balloons certainly do. Temperature layers in the atmosphere can cause what we call anomalous propagation, where the radar beam bends and detects objects beyond its normal range.
But you sound uncertain.
Because the pilot reports add a troubling dimension. If we had only the radar contacts, I'd be comfortable attributing them to equipment or atmospheric effects. But when experienced aviators report visual observations that correspond to the radar timing and location, well, that suggests something physically present rather than an artifact of detection. The descriptions are also remarkably consistent across multiple witnesses. Disc-shaped objects, high altitude, unusual movement characteristics. When multiple trained observers report similar phenomena independently, a scientist must take that seriously.
What would you recommend?
Observation and data collection. We need altitude measurements, precise timing, photographic evidence if possible. We need to correlate the radar data with visual sightings. Most importantly, we need to approach this scientifically rather than leaping to conclusions. It's possible we're seeing a new atmospheric effect we haven't previously documented. It's possible we're seeing experimental aircraft from our own military. It's even possible, though I'd caution against speculation, that we're seeing something entirely unexpected, but we won't know until we gather proper data.
Professor Armstrong, we appreciate your time.
Of course. I hope your listeners will remember that the history of science is full of phenomena that seemed inexplicable until properly understood.
That was Professor Michael Armstrong of the University of New Mexico. The Pentagon says it will continue monitoring the situation and will issue updates as warranted. Meanwhile, the Army Air Forces ask that any additional pilot sightings be reported immediately through proper channels. In other news tonight, the United Nations Security Council met an emergency session to discuss the Palestine question. This is Sam Spade. Good night.
The University of New Mexico presents Professor Michael Armstrong in tonight's educational broadcast, Science Speaks to the Public. Tonight's topic, Understanding Radar Technology and Unusual Atmospheric Phenomena.
Good evening to our radio audience. My name is Dr. Michael Armstrong, Professor of Atmospheric Physics at the University of New Mexico. Given the recent reports of unusual radar contacts across the Southwest, I've been asked to explain to the general public what radar is, how it functions, and what might account for these puzzling observations. Let me begin with the basics. Radar, which stands for Radio Detection and Ranging, is a technology most Americans became familiar with during the war. It allowed us to detect enemy aircraft and submarines before they could be seen with the naked eye. The principle is quite simple. We send out a pulse of radio energy. When that pulse strikes an object, some of the energy bounces back. By measuring how long it takes for the echo to return, we can calculate how far away the object is. Now, radar is not a perfect technology. It can be fooled. Large flocks of birds sometimes appear on radar screens as solid objects. Weather balloons with metal reflectors create strong returns. Atmospheric conditions, particularly temperature inversions, can bend radar beams and create what we call ghost echoes, returns that appear to be objects but are actually tricks of the atmosphere. This brings us to the recent reports from military installations and airports across the Southwest. What makes these observations unusual, what causes concern among those of us who study such things, is that these radar contacts don't fit the pattern of known false returns. First, the objects appeared simultaneously on multiple radar systems, hundreds of miles apart. This eliminates equipment malfunction as an explanation. Second, the returns were solid and consistent, not the weak, flickering signals we'd expect from atmospheric effects. And third, most troubling, they moved in ways that no known aircraft can move. Radar operators describe objects hovering at extreme altitude, then accelerating to speeds far exceeding anything in our current aviation inventory, then stopping again. These aren't the movement patterns of weather balloons drifting with wind currents. These suggest controlled flight by something with capabilities beyond our present technology. Now, I can hear some listeners asking, could these be secret military tests? It's a reasonable question. We know the Army Air Forces have been testing jet aircraft and experimental designs, but there are significant problems with that explanation. Modern jet fighters can reach altitudes of 40 to 50,000 feet, but not routinely, and they cannot hover. No aircraft in our inventory, or in any inventory that I'm aware of, can perform the maneuvers these radar operators are describing. Moreover, why would classified test flights occur over commercial air routes where civilian pilots would observe them? Some have suggested Soviet technology. While I cannot speak to intelligence matters, I can say that the performance characteristics reported would represent an advancement of decades beyond current aerospace engineering. For any nation to have achieved such a leap in secret strains credibility. So we're left with a puzzle. Objects that appear on multiple independent radar systems. Objects that trained pilots observe visually. Objects that move in ways that appear to violate our understanding of flight. What are they? As a scientist, I must be honest with you. I don't know. And that uncertainty is what troubles me. We have eliminated the most common explanations: equipment error, atmospheric phenomena, known aircraft. What remains is something we cannot yet explain. I would encourage all listeners to approach these reports with rational skepticism, but also with open minds. Document what you observe. Report sightings to proper authorities, and remember that throughout history, phenomena that seemed inexplicable eventually yielded to scientific inquiry. Whether these radar contacts represent advanced human technology we don't yet understand, or something else entirely, only continued observation and analysis will tell. What I can say with certainty is this: something is appearing in our skies, something is being detected by our instruments, and that something deserves serious scientific attention. Thank you for listening. This has been Science Speaks to the Public, a presentation of the University of New Mexico. Good evening.
You've been listening to Professor Michael Armstrong discussing radar technology and recent atmospheric phenomena. Join us next week when Professor Armstrong will discuss upper atmospheric research and weather balloon programs. This is WXYZ, 1230 kilocycles.
Feeling run down? Prometheus Pharmaceuticals presents Vita Boost Tonic, a scientific blend of vitamins and minerals to restore your natural vigor. Doctors recommend Vita Boost for fatigue, poor appetite, and nervous exhaustion. Pleasant citrus flavor, suitable for adults and children over 12. Prometheus Pharmaceuticals, bringing you the gift of health. Available at drugstores nationwide, or write Prometheus Pharmaceuticals, Boston, Massachusetts. We interrupt this program for a special bulletin from the newsroom. This is WXYZ, Albuquerque. This is Sam Spade with breaking news from Roswell, New Mexico. The Army Air Forces has just issued an extraordinary statement confirming that personnel from the Roswell Army Airfield have recovered what is being described as a, quote, flying disc, end quote. According to the official press release issued 30 minutes ago, the object was found on a ranch approximately 75 miles northwest of Roswell. The statement reads, quote, "The many rumors regarding the flying disc became a reality yesterday when the intelligence office of the 797th Bombardment Group of the 8th Air Force, Roswell Army Airfield, was fortunate enough to gain possession of a disc through the cooperation of one of the local ranchers in the sheriff's office of Chavez County," end quote. The press release goes on to state that, quote, "The flying object landed on a ranch near Roswell sometime last week. Not having phone facilities, the rancher stored the disc until such time as he was able to contact the sheriff's office, who in turn notified Major Jesse Marcel of the 709th Intelligence Office, end quote. This represents the first official acknowledgement by the United States military that one of the so-called flying discs has been recovered. The Air Forces has made no statement regarding the origin or nature of the object, saying only that it has been, quote, loaned to higher headquarters, end quote. We have reporters en route to Roswell and will bring you additional details as they become available. Stay tuned to WXYZ for continuing coverage of this developing story. We now return you to your regularly scheduled programming. Good afternoon. This is Sam Spade with continuing coverage of the extraordinary developments in Roswell. It's now been 3 hours since the Army Air Forces confirmed the recovery of what it described as a flying disc, and public interest has been, to put it mildly, intense. Telephone lines to Roswell Army Airfield have been jammed since the announcement. The base commander's office reports receiving over 300 calls in the first hour alone. Meanwhile, reporters from across the country are converging on this small town of some 25,000 residents. Our affiliate station, KSWS in Roswell, conducted an interview this afternoon with Mac Brazel, the rancher who discovered the debris. We're going to play that interview for you now.
Mr. Brazel, thank you for speaking with us. Can you describe what you found?
Well, it was about a week ago, maybe 8 days now. I was out checking on sheep after we had some thunderstorms come through. Found this debris scattered across maybe a quarter mile of my property. Strangest stuff I ever saw.
Can you describe it?
There was this foil-like material. Thin as paper, but you couldn't tear it. Tried to crease it, and it'd smooth itself back out. Just spring right back to flat like it had memory or something. There were these sticks, too. Lightweight, maybe 2 or 3 feet long. Couldn't break them, couldn't burn them. Tried both. And there were these markings. Symbols of some kind. Not English, not Spanish. Not anything I recognized. Looked almost like hieroglyphics, you know, like Egyptian writing, but different.
What made you report it to the sheriff?
Well, I'd been hearing about these flying disc reports on the radio. Figured maybe this was connected. Sheriff Wilcox took it serious. Called the airfield right away. Major Marcel came out that same afternoon with some men. Spent hours collecting every scrap they could find.
Did they tell you what it was?
Not directly, no. But I heard them talking amongst themselves. One of the fellows said, "This isn't from any aircraft we've got." Another one just kept saying, "Look at this. Just look at this." Like he couldn't believe what he was seeing.
That interview was recorded at approximately 12:30 this afternoon at the rancher's property. Since then, additional witnesses have come forward with accounts that, if accurate, add an even more remarkable dimension to this story. 3 residents of Roswell have told our affiliate station that military personnel were observed removing what appeared to be small bodies from a crash site north of town. The witnesses, who asked not to be identified, described seeing tarps covering objects of unusual shape being loaded into military vehicles. One witness, a mortician at a local funeral home, reports being contacted by someone from the base asking about the availability of small caskets, approximately 3.5 to 4 feet in length. The mortician says the inquiry was made Monday evening, but that no caskets were ultimately requested. The Army Air Forces has not commented on these reports. Base personnel have been ordered not to speak with reporters, and military police have established a perimeter around the debris field location. What we can confirm is this. The Roswell Army Airfield publicly stated this morning that it recovered a flying disc. a rancher found debris with properties that he describes as unlike any conventional material, and the military has taken extraordinary measures to secure the area and control access to both the debris and the personnel involved. We've attempted to reach Major Jesse Marcel, the intelligence officer who oversaw the recovery, but base officials say he's unavailable for comment. We've also attempted to reach Sheriff George Wilcox, who initially received the rancher's report, but he has declined all interviews. The question on everyone's mind tonight is simple. If the Army Air Forces has indeed recovered a flying disc, where did it come from? We'll continue monitoring this story throughout the afternoon and evening. A full update will be provided on our 6 o'clock news program. This is Sam Spade. Gentlemen, dress for success with Normandy haberdashery, custom tailoring, ready-to-wear suits, and the finest selection of neckties west of New York City. Whether you're closing a business deal or attending Sunday service, Normandy ensures you look your absolute best. Normandy haberdashery, where commanders of industry shop. 3 locations, Chicago, Detroit, and Boston. Alterations completed within 48 hours. Good evening. This is Sam Spade with a dramatic reversal in the story that has captivated the nation today. Late this afternoon, the Army Air Forces issued a new statement that directly contradicts its earlier announcement regarding the Roswell incident. The military now states that what was recovered was not a flying disc, but rather a weather balloon with a radar reflector. The retraction came at approximately 5:30 p.m. from the office of Brigadier General Roger Ramey, commander of the 8th Air Force at Fort Worth Army Airfield in Texas. General Ramey displayed debris to reporters at a hastily arranged press conference, identifying it as, quote, a high-altitude weather balloon equipped with a radar target, end quote.
I want to address the confusion that has occurred today regarding the incident near Roswell. This morning's press release from Roswell Army Airfield was issued based on an initial misidentification of the recovered material. The officer responsible is a skilled intelligence officer but has limited experience with weather observation equipment. Upon examination by experienced meteorological personnel here at Fort Worth, the material has been positively identified as a standard weather balloon. These balloons are used routinely by the Weather Bureau and military installations for upper atmospheric observations. They carry radar reflectors made of foil and balsa wood to enhance tracking capability. What appeared unusual to untrained eyes is, in fact, entirely commonplace equipment. We regret the confusion this morning's statement has caused, but we want to be absolutely clear. What was recovered near Roswell was a weather balloon, nothing more.
General Ramey took questions for approximately 15 minutes, then abruptly ended the press conference. Reporters present described him as visibly uncomfortable and noted that he refused to allow close examination of the debris he displayed. But here's what troubles many observers tonight. The description of the material provided by rancher Mac Brazel this afternoon does not match the characteristics of rubber and aluminum foil. Mr. Brazel specifically described material that could not be torn or creased, material that would, in his words, smooth itself back out. Weather balloons are made of rubber. They tear easily. Radar reflectors are made of aluminum foil and balsa wood. Both materials are entirely conventional and readily identifiable. We attempted to reach Mr. Brazel this evening for his reaction to the military's revised explanation, but discovered he is no longer at his ranch. Neighbors report he was taken to Roswell Army Airfield earlier this afternoon. His current whereabouts are unknown. Sheriff George Wilcox, who initially received the debris and contacted the airfield, has also become suddenly unavailable. His deputy told us the sheriff has been, quote, advised not to discuss the matter further, end quote. The 3 witnesses who reported seeing small bodies being transported from a crash site have all declined to speak with reporters again. One, reached by telephone, said only, I was mistaken about what I saw, then hung up. The mortician who reported being contacted about small caskets now says he, quote, doesn't recall any such conversation, end quote. In less than 8 hours, this story has gone from an official military announcement of a recovered flying disc to witness accounts of unusual debris and possible bodies to a complete retraction and identification as a weather balloon. And every witness who initially came forward has either become unavailable or changed their story. Major Jesse Marcel, the intelligence officer who oversaw the recovery and who examined the debris extensively, has not been made available for comment. Base officials say he's been reassigned to other duties. We spoke this evening with Professor Michael Armstrong at the University of New Mexico, who has been following these developments.
I find the timing and coordination of these retractions remarkable. Within hours of witnesses providing detailed accounts, those same witnesses either vanish or recant. The rancher who found the debris has been taken to a military base. The sheriff won't talk. The mortician doesn't remember. As a scientist, I'm trained to evaluate evidence objectively. And what the evidence suggests is that something occurred that the military does not want publicly discussed. Whether that something is a classified test program, experimental equipment, or something else entirely, I cannot say, but the pattern of witness suppression is unmistakable.
The Army Air Forces maintains that the matter is closed and that no further statements will be forthcoming. The debris, we're told, has been disposed of. The area has been cleared, and this morning's extraordinary announcement has been officially characterized as an unfortunate error by inexperienced personnel. But questions remain. Why would experienced military intelligence officers mistake a weather balloon for a flying disc? Why were witnesses so quickly silenced or made unavailable? And why has the base gone to such lengths to control access to everyone involved? The official explanation is weather balloon. The public may decide for themselves whether that explanation is satisfactory. We'll continue monitoring this story. In other news tonight, the Senate has voted to override President Truman's veto of the Taft-Hartley Act. This is Sam Spade. Good night.
We interrupt this program for an official statement from the War Department. This bulletin is being broadcast simultaneously on all networks nationwide.
The following statement is issued by the War Department, Washington, District of Columbia, July 10th, 1947, regarding recent reports concerning an incident near Roswell, New Mexico. The War Department wishes to provide the following definitive statement for the information of the American people. On July 8th, personnel from Roswell Army Airfield recovered debris from a ranch approximately 75 miles northwest of Roswell. Following preliminary examination by base personnel, a press release was issued characterizing the recovered material as a, quote, flying disc, end quote. This characterization was issued in error. Subsequent examination by qualified meteorological and intelligence personnel at Fort Worth Army Airfield conclusively identified the debris as remnants of a high-altitude weather balloon and its associated radar reflector equipment. Such equipment is routinely employed by the Weather Bureau and military meteorological services for atmospheric observations. The War Department acknowledges that the initial press release was unfortunate and has counseled the personnel responsible regarding proper identification and reporting procedures. We wish to emphasize that at no time was any evidence discovered that would suggest origins other than conventional weather observation equipment. Regarding persistent rumors concerning the alleged recovery of, quote, bodies or, quote, unusual materials, end quote, the War Department states categorically that no such evidence exists or has ever existed. These rumors appear to have originated from misidentification of the balloon debris and subsequent embellishment through repetition. The War Department has reviewed all available evidence, interviewed all personnel involved, and examined all recovered materials. Our conclusion is unambiguous. The Roswell incident involved the recovery of a weather balloon, period. With regard to the broader phenomenon of reported flying disc sightings, the War Department continues to investigate all credible reports. To date, our investigations have identified the following sources for such reports. 1, misidentification of conventional aircraft, particularly aircraft seen under unusual lighting conditions or at unfamiliar angles. 2, weather balloons and other atmospheric research equipment. 3, natural atmospheric phenomena, including temperature inversions, unusual cloud formations, and optical effects. 4, in some cases, deliberate hoaxes perpetrated by individuals seeking attention. The War Department wishes to assure the American people that we maintain constant vigilance regarding our nation's airspace. No unauthorized aircraft, domestic or foreign, has penetrated American airspace without detection and appropriate response. Our radar networks, fighter interceptor forces, and intelligence services remain at peak readiness. We recognize that reports of unusual aerial phenomena have generated public interest and, in some cases, concern. We wish to address those concerns directly. The technology of modern warfare has made the skies busy places. Experimental aircraft, high-altitude research equipment, and atmospheric testing create visual effects that may appear unusual to untrained observers. This does not indicate threat or mystery, merely the unfamiliarity of new technology. The War Department urges citizens to exercise appropriate skepticism when evaluating sensational claims. Not every unusual sight in the sky represents something extraordinary. In the vast majority of cases, conventional explanations exist for reported phenomena. We also caution against the spread of unfounded speculation that serves only to undermine public confidence in our national defense institutions. The men and women of the Army Air Forces are dedicated professionals who take their responsibilities seriously. When they tell the American people that the Roswell incident involved a weather balloon, that statement is based on thorough investigation and expert analysis. The matter is closed. No further statements will be issued regarding the Roswell incident, absent new evidence, which the War Department does not anticipate. Citizens who observe unusual aerial phenomena are encouraged to report such observations to local military installations or law enforcement authorities, who will forward reports to appropriate channels for investigation. The War Department thanks the American people for their continued confidence in our nation's defense. End of statement.
That was an official statement from the War Department, broadcast simultaneously nationwide. We now return you to your regularly scheduled programming.
Good evening. This is Sam Spade with the evening news for Thursday, August 21st, 1947. Tonight, we begin with a scientific mystery that has amateur astronomers across the country puzzled and professional astronomers increasingly concerned. Over the past 3 weeks, observers have documented a pattern of stars disappearing and reappearing in the night sky, a phenomenon that suggests the presence of very large objects at very high altitude. The observations began in late July when amateur astronomers in Southern California reported brief periods where multiple stars would vanish simultaneously from their field of view, then reappear minutes later. Initially dismissed as equipment problems or atmospheric disturbances, the reports have now grown to include observers in 7 states, all documenting similar events with remarkable precision. What makes these observations particularly significant is the coordination. Multiple stars disappear at once, suggesting something passing between the observer and those stars. And the pattern of occultations, that's the technical term for when an object blocks starlight, has been moving systematically from south to north over the past 3 weeks at a rate of approximately 60 to 80 miles per day. Joining us tonight is Dr. Edwin Hubble, professional astronomer at the Mount Wilson Observatory in California, who has been coordinating observations with amateur astronomers nationwide. Dr. Hubble, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I should say at the outset that what we're observing is genuinely anomalous, meaning it doesn't fit comfortably into any category of known phenomena.
Can you walk us through what observers are seeing?
Certainly. The typical observation involves a group of stars, usually 3 to 7 in a given field of view, that suddenly disappear for a period ranging from 2 to 8 minutes. The stars don't dim gradually as they would during an eclipse or atmospheric obscuration. They simply vanish as though something opaque has moved directly between the observer and those stars. What's remarkable is the scale. When multiple stars disappear simultaneously, and those stars are separated by several degrees in the sky, we can calculate the size of the object causing the occultation through basic geometry. The numbers are, well, they're extraordinary.
How large are we talking?
Based on the altitude estimates and the angular separation of affected stars, we're looking at objects several miles in dimension, at minimum 2 to 3 miles across, possibly larger.
That seems impossible.
It seems impossible because nothing we know of operates at those altitudes at those sizes. Current aircraft rarely exceed 50,000 feet, and when they do, they are measured in tens of feet, not miles. Weather balloons reach high altitudes, but are far too small to block multiple stars simultaneously. Clouds don't form at the altitudes we're calculating.
Could these be astronomical objects? Asteroids? Meteors?
No, asteroids don't hover. The pattern we're seeing shows objects that remain stationary relative to the ground for extended periods, then move at constant velocity. Meteors flash across the sky in seconds. These objects linger for minutes and return to the same positions night after night. We've now documented 17 separate occultation events over 23 days. The pattern is moving steadily northward. Started in Southern California on July 27th, was observed over Central California by August 5th, Nevada by August 10th, Idaho by August 15th. As of last night, observers in Montana reported events consistent with the pattern.
Are you suggesting these are craft of some kind?
I'm suggesting that something very large is moving through our atmosphere at altitudes previously thought impossible, and that this something is either reflecting so little light that we can't see it directly, or has some method of remaining invisible to optical observation. Whether those somethings are craft, I cannot say, but they demonstrate characteristics of intentional movement rather than natural drift.
Has the military been informed of these observations?
Extensively. We've shared our data with the Air Forces, with the Weather Bureau, with every relevant authority we can identify. The response has been, shall we say, cautious. We've been asked to continue observations and maintain records, but we've received no official assessment of what we're documenting. Unofficially, I can tell you that several scientists who've reviewed our data are deeply concerned. One physicist told me, quote, "If objects this large can move through our atmosphere undetected, then our entire understanding of aviation and atmospheric science may need revision," end quote.
What do you think is happening?
As a scientist, I deal in observations and data, not speculation. What I can tell you is this. Multiple trained observers, using calibrated equipment, are documenting a consistent pattern of star occlusions. The pattern demonstrates intentional movement. The scale is unprecedented, and the objects causing these occultations are invisible to direct observation. Those are the facts. What they mean, I leave to others to determine. But I will say this. In 30 years of astronomical observation, I've never encountered anything remotely like this. And that, frankly, is what keeps me awake at night.
Dr. Hubble, we appreciate your time and your candor.
Thank you. I would encourage your listeners who are amateur astronomers to continue documenting these events. The more data we gather, the better chance we have of understanding what we're dealing with.
That was Dr. Edwin Hubble of the Mount Wilson Observatory. The Army Air Forces has declined to comment on these observations, saying only that, quote, all available information is being analyzed by appropriate personnel, end quote. The scientific community, meanwhile, appears divided. Some researchers share Dr. Hubble's concern and are calling for investigation. Others dismiss the observations as measurement errors or atmospheric effects that merely appear coordinated. But several prominent scientists have gone on record expressing alarm. One atmospheric physicist told us off the record that he's been, quote, strongly encouraged, end quote, not to discuss his analysis publicly. When we asked by whom, he declined to answer. We'll continue following this story as observations continue. In other news tonight, the United Nations Security Council has approved the partition plan for Palestine. This is Sam Spade. Good night. See the world as it truly is with Tyrrell optical lenses. Our advanced grinding techniques produce the clearest, most lifelike vision available. Customers report colors appear more vivid, details sharper, almost as if seeing for the first time. Tyrrell Optical. More human than human is our motto. Visit your optometrist and ask for Tyrrell Precision Lenses. Tyrrell Optical, Los Angeles, California.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We return now to the house on Blackwood Hill. Last week, we left Dr. Edward Marsh waiting in his uncle's house, waiting for 3:17 a.m., waiting to see if the silence his uncle described would truly come. Tonight, we learn what visited him in that silence. The clock in the hallway began its descent toward 3:17. Edward sat rigid in his chair, Uncle's journal in his lap, eyes fixed on his pocket watch. 3:16 and 30 seconds. The house seemed to know. The ordinary sounds of an old building, the creaks and groans he'd grown accustomed to, began to fade. The wind against the windows diminished. Even the ticking of his watch grew softer. 3:17 exactly. Silence. Not the silence of a quiet room, but the silence of a tomb sealed for centuries. The silence of deep earth and forgotten places. Edward tried to move, found his limbs heavy, as though the air itself had thickened to the consistency of cold honey. And then he heard it. Footsteps. Above him, in the room directly overhead. Slow, measured, deliberate. Not the quick, nervous steps of a living person, but the unhurried tread of something that had all the time in the world. Pacing. Back and forth. Back and forth. Edward's heart hammered in his chest. The room above him was the attic. He'd checked it that afternoon. The door was sealed, nailed shut from the outside, covered with wallpaper that hadn't been disturbed in decades. Nothing could be up there. The footsteps stopped. The silence deepened, became absolute. And in that terrible quiet, Edward heard something else. A voice, or voices, whispering. He couldn't make out words, couldn't identify the language, but the sound made his teeth ache and his vision blur. It was the sound of things that should not speak, attempting human speech. It was the sound of the grave trying to sing. Then, above the whispers, another sound. Scratching. Slow and deliberate, as though something with very long nails was dragging them across wood, drawing closer, coming down. Edward wanted to run. Every instinct screamed at him to flee that locked room, flee the house, flee Blackwood Hill entirely. But his body wouldn't respond. He sat frozen, watching the door, listening to the scratching grow louder. It reached his door. The scratching stopped. Something on the other side of that door was waiting. Standing there, silent, patient. The doorknob began to turn. Slowly, deliberately, testing the lock. The iron bolt held, but the knob continued its rotation. Back and forth, as though whatever stood outside was learning how locks worked. 3:18. The silence broke like shattering glass. Sound rushed back into the world. The wind resumed its assault on the windows. His watch ticked loudly in his hand. And from beyond his door, Edward heard retreating footsteps ascending the stairs. Back to the attic. Back to the sealed room that couldn't be entered. Edward didn't move for a full hour. Didn't dare. Sat in his chair as dawnlight began to creep through the windows. His eyes fixed on that door, his mind refusing to accept what he'd experienced. But when morning finally came, when sunlight had driven the shadows from the corners, he unlocked his door with trembling hands. And there, on the floor just outside his room, he found them. Scratches, deep gouges in the hardwood, arranged in sets of 5. As though something with very long fingers had clawed at the floor while waiting for his door to open. Edward descended to the study, found his uncle's journal still open to the last entry, reread those final desperate words, and beneath them, in handwriting he recognized but would later swear he hadn't seen the night before, a postscript. They want me to join them, Edward. They've been asking for 3 years. Every night at 3:17, they ask. I think tonight I'm going to say yes. The words were dated 3 days before his uncle's death. Edward returned upstairs, stood before the sealed attic door, put his hand against the wallpaper, felt the wood beneath. From the other side, he heard it, faint, patient, the sound of something pacing, back and forth, waiting. And so we leave Dr. Marsh, standing before that sealed door, knowing he should leave, knowing he should never return, but also knowing, with the certainty that comes from true horror, that he will not leave, that he will open that door, that he will discover what paces in the darkness. Because some doors, once we know they exist, cannot remain closed. Join us next week for part 3 of The House on Blackwood Hill, when Dr. Marsh learns what his uncle discovered in those final desperate days. Until then, sleep well. And if you wake at 3:17 in the morning and hear footsteps above you and know you are alone, perhaps it's best to keep your eyes closed. Good night.
Brighten your home with Aperture Science light fixtures, where innovation meets elegance. Our patented dual portal reflection system provides twice the illumination of ordinary lamps using the same electrical current. Available in chrome, brass, and modern streamlined designs. Aperture Science. We do what we must because we can. Visit your local hardware store or write to Aperture Science Fixtures, Cleveland, Ohio. We've been receiving an extraordinary volume of letters from listeners in recent weeks, many describing experiences they've hesitated to share publicly for fear of ridicule. Tonight, with the author's permission, I'm going to read one such letter in its entirety. The writer has asked that we use only his first name, Thomas, to protect his privacy. The letter reads as follows. Dear Station WXYZ, I'm writing about something that happened on my property on the night of August 2nd. I run cattle on 3 sections in eastern New Mexico, about 40 miles from the nearest town. I'm 53 years old, been ranching for 30 years, and I've seen about everything the high desert can throw at a man. I thought I had. Anyway, it was around 11:30 p.m. I was up late repairing fence line by the north pasture when I saw a light in the sky, maybe 300 feet up, completely silent. Not a star, not a plane. A light, solid and steady, about the size of a barn if I had to guess. The light moved slowly over my land in what looked like a search pattern, back and forth, methodical, like someone looking for something specific. Then it stopped, hung motionless for maybe 30 seconds, and a beam of light came down from it, straight down like a pillar. 3 of my steers were standing in that beam, just standing there, not moving at all, which isn't natural for cattle. Then, and I know how this sounds, but I watched it happen, those steers began to float upward. All 3 of them, just rising into the air like they weighed nothing. No wires, no ropes, just floating up toward that light. I tried to shout, couldn't make a sound. Tried to run toward them, my legs wouldn't move. I was awake, conscious, aware of everything happening, but I couldn't move a muscle, couldn't even turn my head. All I could do was watch. This lasted maybe 2 minutes, though it felt like an hour. The steers disappeared up into that light, and then the light itself vanished, just gone, like someone flipped a switch. And the moment it disappeared, I could move again. I went out to where those steers had been standing. Found a circle in the grass, perfectly round, about 40 feet across. Inside that circle, every blade of grass was dead. Not burned exactly, but brown and brittle like it had been baked. The ground itself was hard, compacted, almost like it had been pressed down by tremendous weight. I called the sheriff the next morning. He came out, looked at the circle, took some photographs, wrote it up as lightning strike. I told him it wasn't lightning, that I saw what happened. He just looked at me and said, Tom, if you want your insurance claim to go through, it was lightning. I've lost sleep over this, not just because 3 good steers are gone, though that's money I can't afford to lose, but because of what I saw. Something came down from the sky, took my animals, and left evidence that anyone with eyes can see. And when I try to tell people what happened, they look at me like I've lost my mind. I'm writing to you because you've been covering these strange reports. Maybe other people have seen similar things. Maybe I'm not crazy, but I know what I saw. Something is out there, and it's not ours. Sincerely, Thomas. We verified with the Sheriff's Department that a report was indeed filed on August 3rd for the location and circumstances described in this letter. The official report lists the incident as, quote, possible lightning strike, end quote. Since reading this letter on air this evening, we've received 17 telephone calls, 11 from listeners describing similar experiences. Lights at night, missing livestock, circular ground markings. Several callers reported the same paralysis effect that Thomas described, being unable to move or cry out while remaining fully conscious. We're continuing to collect these accounts. If you've experienced something similar and wish to share your story, you can write to us at Station WXYZ, Albuquerque, New Mexico. We now return to our regularly scheduled programming. Good evening. This is Sam Spade with a special report from the field. We're going live now to correspondent Wesley Crusher, who is at a ranch approximately 60 miles north of Roswell, where an unusual incident was reported early this morning. Wesley, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you clearly. I'm standing on ranch property owned by the Daniels family, about 60 miles north of Roswell, maybe 5 miles from the nearest paved road. Behind me, you'd be able to see, well, it's difficult to describe.
Take your time. What are you seeing?
There are 27 cattle missing. That's according to Mr. Daniels, the property owner. What he found this morning was a series of circular depressions in the ground, 3 of them, each about 35 to 40 feet in diameter. Inside these circles, the grass is completely dead, and the soil has this strange texture. It's hard, almost fused, like it's been subjected to intense heat, but there's no charring, no burning. Mr. Daniels says he heard strange sounds around midnight. A low humming that seemed to come from above rather than the ground. Went to his window, saw lights moving over his north pasture. By the time he got dressed and outside, the lights were gone, and come morning, so were the cattle.
Are there any other witnesses?
2 ranch hands were in the bunkhouse and reported hearing the same humming sound. They say it was so low, it was almost below the threshold of hearing, more felt than heard, made their teeth ache, they said. One of them tried to go outside to investigate, but felt, quote, too frightened to move, end quote. Local law enforcement has been contacted, but honestly, I don't know what they can do with this. The evidence is here, physical and undeniable. The cattle are gone, the ground shows clear signs of something landing or hovering, and there's no conventional explanation that... Wait, do you hear that?
Wesley, what is it?
There's a humming. Low, very low. I can feel it in my chest. The rancher's dogs just started barking, and now they've gone silent. That's not normal. Something in the sky, about 500 feet up, maybe closer. It's enormous. I can see lights, multiple lights arranged in a circular pattern, and they're not moving like any aircraft I've ever seen.
Wesley, describe what you're seeing.
It's disc-shaped, or circular. The lights are rotating slowly, blue and white, and there's this shimmer around it, like heat distortion. It's completely silent now. The humming has stopped, but I can still feel something, a pressure in the air. There's a beam. Dear God, there's a beam of light coming down. It's blue-white, and it's directed at... I can't move. My legs won't... I'm trying to move, and I can't...
Wesley, can you hear me? Wesley Crusher, respond. We've lost the signal. Engineers, can we reestablish the connection? We're experiencing technical difficulties with our remote broadcast. We'll attempt to reestablish contact with our correspondent and bring you updates as they become available. Farmers, increase your yields with Hess Farm equipment. Our new rotary combines harvest faster and cleaner than traditional methods. Irrigation systems designed for southwestern conditions. Financing available through the Farm Credit Administration. 3 generations of manufacturing excellence. Hess Farm equipment, growing with America. Showrooms in Fresno and Bakersfield, California. See your local dealer or write for our catalog. Good evening. This is Sam Spade with news of a tragic development in last night's broadcast. Correspondent Wesley Crusher, age 32, has been reported dead following what the Army Air Forces is calling an aircraft accident. According to a statement released this morning by military authorities, Mr. Crusher was killed when a civilian aircraft he was piloting crashed approximately 70 miles north of Roswell. The aircraft, a single-engine Cessna, was discovered early this morning by search parties. But there is a significant discrepancy in this official account. Our listeners heard last night's broadcast. Wesley Crusher was not in an aircraft. He traveled to the Daniels Ranch by automobile, accompanied by our technical engineer who was operating the remote transmission equipment. At no point was he in an airplane.
This is Tom Paris reporting from the Daniels Ranch. I'm standing approximately 100 yards from where Wesley Crusher was broadcasting last night when we lost contact. The automobile he arrived in, a station wagon belonging to this news organization, is still here. The keys are still in the ignition. The Army Air Forces arrived on scene at approximately 6 a.m. this morning. They established a perimeter and have restricted access to the area where the incident occurred. When I attempted to enter the cordon zone, I was turned back by military police. I was able to speak with Jack Shepard, the ranch foreman who witnessed last night's events. Mr. Shepard, can you describe what you saw?
I was in the bunkhouse, maybe 300 yards from where your man was broadcasting. Heard the humming start up, same as the night before. Stepped outside and saw the lights, this circular object, hovering maybe 400 or 500 feet up. There was a beam of light coming down from it, bright blue-white, and I could see a figure in that beam. A man. Had to be your correspondent. He was. And I know how this sounds. But he was floating, rising up toward that object like he was being pulled on wires, except there weren't any wires. I tried to run toward him. Got maybe 10 steps before I couldn't move anymore. Legs just froze. Stood there, unable to do anything but watch for maybe 4 or 5 minutes. Then the light went out. The object vanished, and he was gone.
When did the military arrive?
2 hours later. Sun wasn't even up yet. They came in force, maybe 30 vehicles, set up a perimeter, wouldn't let anyone near the area, told us it was for our own safety, that there might be, quote, hazardous materials, end quote. When I told them what I saw, the officer said I was mistaken, that I couldn't have seen what I described. Said Wesley Crusher died in a plane crash 70 miles from here. I told him your man didn't have a plane. He just looked at me and said, "The official report will show an aircraft accident."
Mr. Shepard, are you certain about what you witnessed?
I'm 58 years old. Been working this land for 40 years. I know what I saw. That man was taken up into that object, and the military doesn't want anyone talking about it.
That was Tom Paris reporting from the scene. We've attempted to reach the Army Air Forces for clarification on the discrepancies between witness accounts and the official statement. A spokesman told us, quote, "The matter is under investigation and the official report stands," end quote. When pressed on the fact that our correspondent was in an automobile, not an aircraft, the spokesman said, quote, "We cannot comment on ongoing investigations or discuss operational details," end quote. The FBI has also been contacted. This afternoon, agents visited this station and collected all recordings of last night's broadcast. They informed our station manager that discussing the incident publicly could, quote, "potentially interfere with a federal investigation and may result in charges," end quote. We are consulting with our attorneys regarding these threats. We believe the public has a right to know what happened to one of our correspondents. Wesley Crusher was doing his job, reporting the news, when something occurred that defies conventional explanation. The government's response has been to suppress information and intimidate witnesses. This is not how a free press operates in a free society. Wesley Crusher leaves behind a wife and 2 young children. Our hearts go out to his family during this impossible time. He was a dedicated journalist who believed the public deserved the truth. We will honor his memory by continuing to report that truth, regardless of pressure to remain silent. This is Sam Spade. Good night. Good evening, listeners. We continue to receive correspondence regarding unusual experiences. Tonight's letter comes to us from a listener in Santa Fe who wishes to remain anonymous. The writer is a school teacher, 32 years of age, married with 2 children. No history of mental illness, no history of sleep disorders. What follows is her account, submitted 3 days ago. Quote, "I'm writing this because I need someone to believe me. My husband thinks I had a nightmare. The doctor says it was sleep paralysis, but I know what I saw. I know what happened in my bedroom. It was Tuesday night, September 23rd. I went to bed at 10:30, same as always. My husband was already asleep beside me. Our children were in their rooms down the hall. Everything was normal. Everything was safe. I woke at 3:17 in the morning. I know the exact time because I could see the clock on my nightstand, the red numbers glowing in the dark. 3:17. I couldn't move. Not couldn't move like being groggy or tired. Couldn't move like being held down, like invisible hands pressing on my chest, my arms, my legs. I tried to call out to my husband, tried to scream, but my voice wouldn't work, my throat wouldn't work. I could only lie there, eyes open, completely paralyzed. And then I saw them, 3 figures standing at the foot of my bed. They weren't shadows. They were solid, real. I could see them clearly in the moonlight coming through the window. Small, maybe 4 feet tall. Thin, impossibly thin. Their heads were too large for their bodies, shaped wrong, bulbous, and their eyes. Huge, black, completely black, no whites, no pupils, just black pools that reflected the moonlight like oil. They were staring at me, all 3 of them, just standing there, perfectly still, staring. I tried to move, tried to scream, tried to wake my husband sleeping right next to me, but I couldn't. I couldn't do anything except lie there and watch them watch me. One of them moved closer. It came around the side of the bed, moving without sound, almost gliding. It stopped beside me, so close I could have touched it if I could move my arm, so close I could see details. Its skin was gray, not pale, gray, smooth, like something that had never seen sunlight. No hair, no eyebrows, just smooth gray skin stretched over that enormous skull. It had 3 fingers on each hand, 3 long, thin fingers, and it reached toward me. I wanted to scream, wanted to thrash, to fight, to do anything, but my body wouldn't respond. I could only watch as that hand came closer, closer, until those 3 fingers touched my forehead. The moment it touched me, everything went wrong. The room seemed to tilt, or maybe I was moving. I couldn't tell. My husband was still beside me, still sleeping, but he looked distant somehow, like I was seeing him through water, like he was in a different world. And I heard sounds. Not sounds exactly, more like sounds being pressed directly into my brain. A humming. And underneath the humming, something else. Voices. Maybe. Talking in a language that made my teeth hurt and my eyes water. The thing leaning over me, I could feel it in my head. Not reading my thoughts. Exactly. But examining them. Like someone flipping through the pages of a book. Looking at my memories. My children's faces. My wedding day. Random moments from my childhood. It was sorting through my mind like someone sorting through a filing cabinet. And then, as quickly as it started, it stopped. The figure stepped back, returned to the foot of the bed. All 3 of them stood there for a moment longer, just watching me. And then, they simply weren't there anymore. Not like they walked away, not like they faded. They were there, and then they weren't. The paralysis broke. I gasped, sucked in air like I'd been drowning. Sat up so fast I nearly fell out of bed. My husband woke up, asked what was wrong. I told him everything, babbling and crying. He said I had a nightmare, sleep paralysis. He'd read about it. Your brain wakes up, but your body doesn't, and you hallucinate. It's common, he said, nothing to worry about. But I went to the bathroom mirror, and there were marks, 3 small marks on my forehead, in a perfect triangle, each one about the size of a pinprick, arranged exactly where those 3 fingers had touched me. I showed my husband. He said maybe I scratched myself in my sleep. Maybe the marks were there before, and I just noticed them now. But I know. I know what I saw. I know those things were in my bedroom. I know they touched me. I know they were real. I haven't slept properly since. I lie awake, watching the clock, watching the shadows. The doctor says it was sleep paralysis. My husband believes the doctor. But every night when I close my eyes, I see those black eyes staring back at me. And I know they're still out there. I know they're still watching. And I know they're going to come back. End quote. The letter is signed with initials only. We have confirmed the writer's identity and verified her background as described. We have also received 17 similar letters in the past 2 weeks, all describing nearly identical experiences. Paralysis at night. Figures in the bedroom. The time, when noted, is always between 3 and 4 a.m. Medical professionals attribute these experiences to sleep paralysis, a known condition where the body remains in sleep paralysis while the mind wakes, often accompanied by hallucinations. However, the consistency of the descriptions, the specific details shared across multiple accounts, and the physical marks reported by several witnesses have raised questions we cannot easily answer. We present this account without conclusion. Draw your own judgments. But if you wake in the night and find you cannot move and see figures standing at the foot of your bed, you are not alone. Others have seen them too. We return now to our regular programming.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we gather today under a shadow of fear, of uncertainty, of grief for a man taken from us in circumstances we struggle to understand. Be with us now as we seek comfort in your word and strength in your presence. Amen. Brothers and sisters, I'm not going to stand here this morning and pretend I have all the answers. I'm not going to tell you I understand what's happening in our community, in our nation, in our skies. What I am going to tell you is this. Fear is natural. Fear is human. But fear is also a weapon, and we must not let it master us. The 23rd Psalm tells us, "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me." Notice it doesn't say, "I will not be afraid." It says, "I will fear no evil." There's a difference. Being afraid is feeling. Fearing evil is a choice. We are afraid. I'd be lying if I said otherwise. People in this congregation have seen things they cannot explain. Strange lights in the night sky, livestock vanishing without trace, and now a man taken while the whole world listened. We are afraid because we do not understand what walks among us. But I want you to hear me clearly. Your neighbors are telling the truth. I've spoken with some of you privately, heard your accounts, seen the evidence you've shown me, the circular marks in your fields, the photographs, the scars you cannot explain. You are not crazy, you are not mistaken, and you are not alone. What we face is something beyond our current understanding. I don't know if what we're seeing is a test from God, a trial of our faith, or something else entirely. But I know this. We are children of God, and nothing can separate us from His love. Not height, nor depth, nor things present, nor things to come, not even visitors from the sky. The Scripture tells us to be strong and courageous. But courage doesn't mean the absence of fear. Courage means acting rightly even when we are afraid. So what does that mean for us today? It means we protect our families. Lock your doors at night. Keep your children close. Watch over your neighbors, especially those who live alone. These are practical acts of love. It means we tell the truth. When officials tell you that you didn't see what you saw, that you're mistaken or confused, you stand firm in your testimony. Truth matters, even when it's frightening, especially when it's frightening. And it means we do not abandon one another. The Israelites, when they stood at the edge of the promised land and sent spies ahead, those spies came back and said, "There are giants in that land." We felt like grasshoppers compared to them. And because they were afraid, they turned back. They wandered in the wilderness for 40 years because fear kept them from the land God promised them. Fear can keep us in the wilderness. Fear can make us turn on each other, doubt each other,
abandon each other. We cannot let that happen. If trials lie ahead, and I believe they do, we will face them together or not at all. I don't know what these lights in the sky portend. I don't know if we're being watched, studied, or judged. But I know that God has not abandoned us. I know that faith is not belief in the absence of evidence, but trust in the presence of fear. And I know that this community, bound together by faith and by love, can endure whatever comes. Let me close with this. A prayer that has sustained people through wars, through plagues, through every manner of trial the world has thrown at humanity. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May he make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May he lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace, even in the valley of the shadow, especially in the valley of the shadow. We are not alone. God is with us, and we are with each other. Amen.
Farmers, protect your crops from insects and blight with Case Aerial Crop Dusting. Our experienced pilots cover more acres in one day than ground equipment can manage in a week. DDT application for cotton, wheat, and vegetable crops. Licensed and insured. Serving California's Central Valley since 1942. Case Aerial. Flying for your harvest. Contact us at Fresno Municipal Airport or call Fresno 2-9876. Good evening. This is Sam Spade with the Evening News for Thursday, October 9th, 1947. Tonight we begin with a disturbing pattern that has emerged across America's heartland over the past 2 weeks. More than 20 towns and rural communities have experienced simultaneous power failures that engineers say cannot be explained by equipment malfunction or weather conditions. The blackouts follow a clear geographic progression, moving deliberately from west to east at a consistent rate. According to wire service reports, the incidents began on September 27th in western Kansas. Since then, the pattern has continued eastward through central Kansas, into Missouri, and as of last night, into southern Illinois. Each blackout occurs during evening hours, lasts between 40 and 45 minutes, and affects multiple towns simultaneously, despite them being on separate power grids. What makes these events particularly unusual is what witnesses report experiencing during the blackouts. In addition to the loss of electrical power, battery-operated radios pick up rhythmic pulses on multiple frequencies. Residents describe a low humming sensation that seems to come from the sky rather than the ground. And in several locations, witnesses report seeing a shimmer in the night sky, described as similar to heat distortion but occurring at high altitude. Power companies in affected areas report no equipment failures, no damage to infrastructure, no logical reason why the electricity stopped flowing. In one case, engineers at a generating station in Hutchinson, Kansas, watched their instruments show normal power generation and transmission even as the town they served sat in complete darkness. The power, in every case, returned spontaneously after 40 to 45 minutes. No intervention required. Systems that showed no failure simply resumed normal operation. We spoke this afternoon with Rick Blaine, Chief Electrical Engineer for the Kansas Power and Light Company, about the technical aspects of these failures.
In 30 years working with electrical systems, I've never seen anything like this. When power fails, there's always a reason. Transformer blows, line goes down, generator fails. You can trace it, find the problem, fix it.
These blackouts show no point of failure. The generators keep running. The transmission lines test normal. The distribution equipment shows no damage. It's as though something is preventing the electricity from reaching its destination without actually disrupting any of the equipment in between. What could cause that?
Theoretically, a powerful electromagnetic field could interfere with electrical transmission. But we're talking about a field that would have to cover hundreds of square miles, affect multiple independent systems simultaneously, then disappear completely after 45 minutes. The amount of energy required to generate such a field would be, well, it exceeds anything in our current generating capacity by orders of magnitude.
Could this be a Soviet weapon? Some kind of attack?
If the Soviets have technology that can selectively shut down electrical systems across hundreds of miles without leaving any trace or causing any damage, then they're decades ahead of us technologically. I find that hard to believe. More to the point, if this were an attack, why would the power come back on its own? Why not leave cities dark?
What's your assessment?
I think something is moving across the country. Something that generates or emits a field powerful enough to interfere with electrical transmission. Whether that something is a natural phenomenon we haven't documented before, or whether it's, well, something else, I can't tell you. But it's real, it's measurable, and it's following a clear path.
That was Rick Blaine of Kansas Power and Light. We should note that the pattern he described has been confirmed by independent analysis. When plotted on a map, the blackouts began in western Kansas on September 27th and have progressed steadily eastward at a rate of 60 to 80 miles per day. If the pattern continues at its current pace, the affected zone will reach the Mississippi River within 3 days. The Army Air Forces declined to comment on the record, but confirmed that fighter aircraft have been scrambled on at least 3 occasions in response to radar contacts in areas experiencing blackouts. According to sources who spoke on condition of anonymity, pilots reported tracking objects that appeared on radar but were not visible to the naked eye. In each case, the objects vanished from radar screens before intercept could be achieved.
The Air Forces is aware of the power disruptions affecting certain areas of the central United States. We are coordinating with civilian authorities and power companies to investigate all possible causes, including whether these disruptions have any connection to aerial phenomena that have been reported in the same regions. At this time, we have no evidence that these events pose a direct threat to national security. However, we are maintaining heightened readiness and will continue monitoring the situation closely.
That statement was issued this afternoon. Notably, it does not deny that aerial phenomena have been observed in connection with the blackouts, only that no direct threat has been identified. The pattern continues tonight. As of our 6 o'clock broadcast, 3 towns in southern Illinois reported simultaneous power failures beginning at approximately 5:45 p.m. Central Time. All 3 towns sit on the projected path if the eastward progression continues. We'll continue monitoring this developing story. In other news tonight, the House Un-American Activities Committee has opened hearings into alleged communist infiltration of the motion picture industry. This is Sam Spade. Good night. Discover tomorrow's conveniences today with Morbius Electronics. Our new automatic record changer plays up to 12 discs without interruption, table radios with improved reception, featuring the new FM band for concert-quality sound, portable models perfect for picnics and beach outings. Morbius Electronics, technology from another world. Available at fine electronics retailers or visit our factory showroom in Pasadena, California.
The University of New Mexico again presents Professor Michael Armstrong in an emergency edition of Science Speaks to the Public. Tonight's urgent topic, the unexplained power failure spreading across America's heartland.
Good evening. I'm speaking to you tonight, not in my usual capacity as an educator, but as a scientist who has spent the past 2 weeks analyzing data that, quite frankly, has kept me awake at night. Many of you listening have experienced or heard about the blackouts affecting towns across Kansas, Missouri, and now Illinois. Your power companies have likely told you these are routine equipment failures. Your local officials may have suggested overloaded systems or aging infrastructure. I need to tell you, as clearly as I can, that these explanations are inadequate. Let me present the facts as they stand. 23 separate communities have lost electrical power simultaneously over the past 2 weeks. These are not towns on the same power grid. They draw electricity from different generating stations, different equipment, different operators, yet they fail at exactly the same moment. The duration of each blackout is between 40 and 45 minutes, not approximately 40 minutes, exactly 40 to 45 minutes, measured by mechanical clocks that continue running during power loss. Ladies and gentlemen, natural phenomena do not operate with this kind of precision. This is not chance. This is not coincidence. And then there's the pattern. If you plot these blackouts on a map by date, you see something extraordinary. September 27th, western Kansas. September 30th, central Kansas. October 3rd, eastern Kansas. The pattern moves steadily eastward at approximately 60 to 80 miles per day. Something is moving across America, and everywhere it goes, the lights go out. Now, I'm an engineer by training. I deal in mathematics and measurable phenomena. So let me give you some numbers. To affect electrical systems over an area of hundreds of square miles requires an electromagnetic field of immense power. I've performed the calculations. The energy necessary exceeds our largest power plants by factors of hundreds, possibly thousands. This field would have to be applied from outside the electrical grid itself, from above, from something capable of projecting organized electromagnetic interference over vast distances. I can hear some of you thinking, could this be a weapon? Soviet technology, perhaps. I will say only this. If any nation on Earth has developed the capability to project electromagnetic fields of this magnitude with this precision, they have achieved a scientific breakthrough centuries beyond current understanding. The physics alone would require principles we haven't discovered, but here's what concerns me most, and I want the public to understand this clearly. During these blackouts, battery-operated radios continue to function. They detect organized pulses, rhythmic patterns, almost like a signal. Witnesses report physical sensations, vibrations in the air, pressure, a feeling that something enormous is nearby. And the military, though they won't confirm this publicly, has logged radar contacts in every region experiencing blackouts, contacts that appear before the power fails and disappear afterward. I'm going to say something now that may sound extraordinary, but I believe the evidence supports it. Something is moving across the United States, demonstrating that it can disable our infrastructure at will. It operates at high altitude. It possesses capabilities far exceeding current human technology, and it appears to be conducting some form of survey or reconnaissance. Based on the current pattern, this phenomenon will cross the Mississippi River within 3 days. It will reach the Ohio River Valley within a week, and if the progression continues, it will arrive at the eastern seaboard, at our major population centers, in approximately 2 weeks. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it wants. But I believe the American people deserve to know that this is happening, that it's not random equipment failure, and that it represents something we don't currently understand. Document what you observe. Report unusual phenomena to authorities. Stay calm, but stay aware. And perhaps, if you live in the path of this pattern, make provisions for when the lights go out, because they will go out. The pattern has not broken yet. This is Dr. Michael Armstrong. Good night, and God help us all.
That was Professor Michael Armstrong in an emergency broadcast from the University of New Mexico. For the latest information on power outages in your area, please consult your local authorities. This is WXYZ, 1230 kilocycles.
Good evening. Stand by for news. Over the past month, something unusual has been happening at radio stations across the regions experiencing these aerial phenomena. Something that, quite frankly, defies easy explanation. Men claiming to be federal inspectors have been visiting broadcast facilities, asking questions, examining equipment, and leaving station managers deeply unsettled. Here's what makes it strange. The Federal Communications Commission has no record of these inspections. The identification these men present looks official, but the badge numbers don't exist in FCC files. And the men themselves, well, multiple witnesses describe them in terms that are troubling. I've spent the past 2 weeks contacting station managers who've received these visits. 5 agreed to speak on the record. Their accounts are remarkably consistent. The visitors always arrive in groups of 2 or 3, always in black sedans, always immaculately clean vehicles despite traveling on dusty rural roads. They present FCC credentials and request access to transmission logs and equipment. But here's where the accounts become disturbing. Station manager Will Lockhart in Alamogordo, New Mexico, described his visitors as, quote, wrong somehow. He couldn't initially articulate what he meant, but after pressing him, he provided specific details.
They moved stiffly, like walking required conscious thought. Their clothing was perfectly pressed, but it didn't quite fit right, like they'd never worn suits before and didn't understand how they should drape. And their faces, I don't know how to describe this, but their faces were pale. Not just pale like someone who doesn't get sun, almost gray. And their eyes were wrong.
Wrong? How?
Too large. Very dark. Almost black. And they didn't blink normally. You know how people blink without thinking? These men blinked deliberately, like they were remembering to do it. Made my skin crawl just being in the room with them.
What did they want?
They photographed our transmission logs, examined our microphones, ran their hands over the equipment like they'd never seen it before. One of them held a microphone very close to his face and asked, "Device converts pressure waves to electromagnetic signals." That's not how someone familiar with radio technology would phrase that question. Then they asked how many people in America own radios. I told them the latest figures, about 70% of households. One of them turned to the others and said, "Sufficient for communication." I asked, "Communication to whom?" They didn't answer, just left.
These men departed in the same black sedan they arrived in. Mr. Lockhart watched them drive away on a straight desert highway. Says the vehicle was out of sight within seconds, which should be impossible on a road where you can see for miles. He called the FCC to verify the inspection. No record. Badge numbers didn't exist. That afternoon, FBI agents arrived at his station. The FBI man was very direct, asked me to describe the visitors in detail, took extensive notes. When I finished, he closed his notebook and said, "If they approach you again, do not let them inside." I asked who they were. He paused for a long time, then said, "We don't know, but they're not human, at least not in any way we understand, and they're very interested in how we communicate." That FBI agent's statement is extraordinary. A federal law enforcement officer explicitly telling a civilian that visitors claiming to be government inspectors are, quote, not human, end quote. We attempted to reach the FBI field office in Albuquerque for confirmation. A spokesman said, quote, "The Bureau is investigating individuals impersonating federal officials. We cannot comment on ongoing investigations," end quote. When pressed on whether these individuals might be foreign agents or something else, the spokesman declined to elaborate. 4 other station managers have provided similar accounts. Men in black suits, pale skin, strange mannerisms, excessive interest in communication equipment and audience reach. In 2 cases, the visitors arrived in vehicles with no license plates. Here's the pattern. These visits began in September and have followed the same geographic progression as the power blackouts. Western locations first, moving steadily eastward. Stations that received visits reported increased radio interference in the days following. What are we looking at? Foreign intelligence operatives? That doesn't explain the physical descriptions or the FBI agent's extraordinary statement. Government agents conducting classified operations? Then why would the FCC have no record? And why would the FBI warn station managers against admitting them? Or something else entirely? Whatever these visitors are, they're demonstrating a keen interest in our broadcast infrastructure. They're studying how we communicate, how many people we can reach, how our equipment functions, As though, and I'm choosing my words carefully here, as though they're mapping our communication networks for some purpose we don't yet understand. The implications are unsettling. If these are not human beings, and a federal agent has stated that possibility on the record, then what are they? And why have they taken such interest in radio stations specifically? We'll continue investigating this story. If you manage a broadcast facility and have experienced similar visits, we encourage you to document the encounter and report it to federal authorities. This is Sam Spade. Stay informed. Stay vigilant. This summer, discover America with Gateway Travel Agency. We arrange train tickets, hotel reservations, and sightseeing tours to destinations nationwide. Visit Yellowstone, the Grand Canyon, or Scenic Route 66. Group rates available for families and organizations. Gateway Travel, your portal to adventure. Stop by our office at Union Station, Kansas City, or call Victor 3-7700. We received this letter 2 days ago from a station manager who asked that we read it on air but not reveal his location or call letters. Given the sensitive nature of what he describes, we've honored that request. The letter reads as follows. To whom it may concern, I'm writing to document an incident that occurred at my station on the evening of October 28th. I manage a small radio station that's been in operation for 18 years. We pride ourselves on serving our community with reliable news and programming. What happened that Tuesday evening has shaken that sense of reliability to its core. 3 men arrived at approximately 9:30 p.m., just as we were preparing to sign off for the night. They presented identification claiming to be FCC inspectors conducting a routine equipment audit. The badges looked official enough, though something about them felt off immediately. The men themselves were, how do I put this, profoundly unsettling. They moved with a stiffness that made me think of marionettes, like each motion had to be planned before execution. Their clothing was immaculate but ill-fitting, expensive fabric tailored incorrectly, and their faces were the most disturbing aspect. Pale, almost gray in the fluorescent lighting, eyes that were too large and too dark, like black glass. They didn't blink normally. When they did blink, it was slow, deliberate, like they were remembering that humans do this and trying to imitate it. I felt examined, studied, like a specimen under glass. They asked to see our transmission logs going back 3 months. While I retrieved them, one of the men produced a device I'd never seen before. Small, metallic, no visible buttons or switches. He aimed it at our microphones and transmitter, and the device emitted a faint clicking sound. When I asked what he was doing, he said only, measuring. Another one held our studio microphone very close to his face, turned it over in his hands, then asked, this device converts pressure variations in atmosphere to electromagnetic waves for transmission. The phrasing was odd, too technical and too basic at the same time, like someone who understood the physics but had never actually used a microphone. I confirmed that yes, that's essentially how microphones work. He nodded slowly and asked how many human individuals receive these transmissions. I told him our estimated audience, maybe 70,000 people in our broadcast range. He turned to his companions and said, and I'm quoting exactly because the phrasing stuck with me, sufficient for communication distribution. I asked, communication of what? All 3 stopped moving and looked at me simultaneously. One said, information transfer to population, coordination of response patterns, preparation for transition. I didn't understand what he meant. Still don't. They photographed our logs with that strange device, then left without another word. Walked to a black Cadillac parked outside. No license plates, not a speck of dust on it, despite the dirt road leading to our station. I watched them drive away. The road from our station is straight for 3 miles before the first curve. I could see their headlights. Then, maybe 10 seconds after they left, the lights just vanished. Not like they went around the curve. They were nowhere near the curve. They just disappeared. I immediately called the FCC regional office to verify the inspection. No record of it. The badge numbers I'd written down don't exist in their system. No inspection was scheduled or authorized for our station. That afternoon, 2 FBI agents arrived. They questioned me extensively about the visitors, took detailed descriptions, asked if I still had the business cards they'd given me. I did, handed them over. The agents examined them carefully, then one of them looked at me and said, "If these individuals or anyone matching their description approaches you again, do not admit them. Contact us immediately." I asked who they were. The agent paused, exchanged a glance with his partner, then said, "I'm going to tell you something that won't appear in any official report. We don't know what they are, but they're not human, at least not in any way we understand, and they're very interested in how we communicate with each other." I asked if they were Russian. He shook his head. "No, sir, not Russian. Not from anywhere on Earth as far as we can determine. I'm writing this down because I need someone else to know what happened. I need documentation that this occurred, because if something happens to me, if I vanish or change my story or suddenly don't remember this conversation, I want there to be a record." Whatever visited my station that night wasn't human, and they were gathering information about how we broadcast to the population. That terrifies me in ways I can't fully articulate. The letter is signed, but we're withholding the name per the writer's request. We contacted the FBI field office to confirm whether such warnings have been issued to broadcast facility managers. A spokesman said, quote, "The Bureau does not comment on ongoing investigations," end quote. Stay with us.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We continue now with part 3 of the house on Blackwood Hill. When we last visited Dr. Edward Marsh, he stood before a sealed attic door, knowing something waited on the other side. Something that had called to his uncle for 3 years. Tonight, Dr. Marsh opens that door. 3 days passed. 3 days of Edward Marsh telling himself he would leave. 3 days of finding reasons to stay just one more night. He researched the house's history at the town library. The librarian, an elderly woman who'd lived in the region her entire life, became quiet when he mentioned Blackwood Hill. "You're staying at the old Marsh place?" she asked. Her expression was difficult to read. Pity, perhaps, or recognition. Edward confirmed that he was. "How long you planning on staying?" she asked. The store owner, overhearing, approached. "You're staying there?" he whispered. "At the house?" The old woman leaned close. "Leave while you still can," she whispered urgently, then wouldn't elaborate. But she helped him find the records. Town census data going back to 1820. Property records. Newspaper archives. Edward spent 4 hours taking notes. 27 people had inhabited that house over 100 years. 14 had disappeared without trace. 8 had died under violent or mysterious circumstances. 5 committed suicide. None had lasted longer than 3 years. Every disappearance occurred between October and March. Every disappearance happened during clear weather. Every disappearance occurred between midnight and 4 a.m. The newspaper archives were more explicit. Witnesses reported strange phenomena each time someone vanished. Lights in the windows when the house should have been dark. Sounds like voices singing in languages no one recognized. People simply not being there one morning. Beds slept in. Breakfast started but not finished, as though they'd been called away mid-motion. The reports stopped appearing in newspapers after 1902. Not because the disappearances stopped. Edward found the editor's note explaining the change in policy. Continued speculation about Blackwood Hill serves only to spread unfounded superstition. This paper will no longer publish accounts that cannot be verified by rational explanation. But the disappearances had continued. They just stopped being reported. Edward drove back to the house as afternoon shadows lengthened. Found the front door standing open. He'd locked it. He was certain he'd locked it. Inside, muddy footprints crossed the floor. Small prints, too narrow, with only 4 toes visible in the dried mud. They led to the stairs. up to the second floor, to the sealed attic door. Edward stood before that door for a long time. Behind the wallpaper, behind the wood, he could hear it. The pacing, back and forth, back and forth. He fetched tools from his uncle's shed. A crowbar, a hammer. His hands shook as he tore away the wallpaper. The door beneath was old. Older than the house itself, he realized. The wood was black with age, covered in symbols carved deep into the grain. Symbols that hurt to look at, that seemed to writhe and shift when viewed from the corner of his eye. The nails holding it shut were iron, hammered in with such force they'd split the wood around them. As though whoever had sealed this door had been desperate to keep it closed. Edward pried out the first nail, the second, the third, behind the door. The pacing stopped. The fourth nail came free. With a sound like a scream, the door swung open on its own, slowly, deliberately, like a mouth opening wide. Beyond, darkness, absolute and complete, the kind of darkness that existed before light was created. Edward held up his lantern, but the light seemed to die at the threshold, as though the darkness itself was drinking it. He should have run, should have fled the house and never returned. Instead, he stepped through. The attic was not what he expected. It was vast, far larger than the exterior of the house should have allowed. The ceiling stretched upward into shadows his lantern couldn't penetrate. The walls seemed to curve away into impossible distances. And in the center of the room, arranged in a perfect circle, were chairs, 27 of them. Old chairs, different styles spanning a century. Some were little more than kindling. Others looked as though they'd been placed yesterday. Each chair faced inward, toward the center of the circle. Edward walked slowly forward. His footsteps echoed strangely, as though the room was both enormous and impossibly small at the same time. He reached the circle, looked down. Burn marks, hundreds of them, scorched into the floorboards in geometric patterns. And in the very center, surrounded by the chairs, a single word carved deep into the wood. Wait. Edward backed away. His lantern flickered, and in that flicker, he saw them. The chairs were occupied, not by people, not exactly, but by shadows in the shape of people. 27 shadows sitting perfectly still, all facing the center of the circle, all watching him. The lantern went out. In the darkness, Edward heard breathing, 27 sets of lungs drawing breath in perfect unison. And then, in voices that sounded like wind through graves, they spoke. Join us, they whispered. The waiting is almost over. Join us. Edward ran, stumbled through the darkness toward where the door should be. Behind him, he heard the chairs moving, scraping across the floor, drawing closer. He found the door, fell through it, slammed it shut behind him, leaned against it, gasping, as something on the other side pressed against the wood. Edward, a voice whispered through the door. His uncle's voice. Edward, I saved you a chair, right next to mine. The waiting is almost over. We've been waiting so long. Join us. Edward hammered the nails back into place, hands shaking so badly he bent half of them. But he sealed the door, covered it with wallpaper again. From beyond, he heard the pacing resume, back and forth, and 27 voices, whispering in unison. Soon, soon. We leave Dr. Marsh tonight. Back in the study, his uncle's journal open before him, reading the earliest entries from 1820, from before the house was even built. An entry that described something the indigenous people had told the first white settlers. A warning about Blackwood Hill, about the hollow place where the spirits gathered, where something waited beneath the earth, something that had been waiting for a very long time. Join us next week for the final chapter of The House on Blackwood Hill, when all secrets are revealed and Dr. Marsh learns why the house was built and what it was built to contain. Until then, sleep well. And if you find yourself in an old house and discover a sealed door and hear voices whispering your name from the other side, perhaps it's best to leave that door sealed. Good night.
Planning a family vacation? Visit Devil's Tower Trading Post in northeastern Wyoming, your gateway to one of nature's most spectacular monuments. Clean cabins, hot meals, cold soda pop, and genuine Indian crafts. Witness the tower that rises over 1,000 feet from the valley floor. Devil's Tower Trading Post, where the earth touches the sky. 40 miles west of Sundance on Highway 14. Open May through September. Good evening. This is Sam Spade with a major development in the ongoing aerial phenomena story. Weather balloon photographs taken at high altitude have captured images that scientists say provide the first physical evidence of enormous objects in our upper atmosphere. The photographs, taken by weather observation equipment operated by multiple universities and military installations, show geometric patterns of atmospheric distortion at altitudes between 30 and 50,000 feet. The patterns are too regular to be natural phenomena. The scale is unprecedented, and tonight we've obtained a classified military document that confirms what many have suspected. We are not alone in our skies. Joining us is Professor Michael Armstrong from the University of New Mexico, who has been analyzing the photographic evidence. Professor, thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you. Before we begin, I want to state clearly that speaking publicly about these findings has, shall we say, professional risks. I've been strongly encouraged not to discuss my analysis, but as a scientist, I believe the public has a right to know what we're observing.
What do the photographs show?
Over the past 6 weeks, weather balloons equipped with photographic equipment have captured images showing atmospheric distortions at very high altitude. These distortions appear as geometric patterns, primarily oval or disc-shaped, that are visible in certain lighting conditions, but invisible to the naked eye from ground level. The patterns are remarkably consistent. Each distortion covers an area of several square miles. We've identified multiple distortions in single photographs, separated by hundreds of miles. They maintain fixed positions relative to the ground for extended periods, suggesting these are solid objects rather than atmospheric effects.
How large are these objects?
Based on altitude calculations and angular measurements, we're looking at objects 1 to 3 miles in length. Think about that for a moment. Objects the size of small towns, hovering at altitudes where nothing should be able to hover, remaining invisible except under specific photographic conditions. This suggests technology capable of either bending light around these objects or somehow rendering them transparent to human vision.
Could these be experimental aircraft?
No. I'll state that categorically. We don't possess the technology to build anything approaching these dimensions that could remain airborne at those altitudes. The largest aircraft currently in existence are measured in tens or perhaps hundreds of feet. These objects are measured in miles. More significantly, infrared photography shows heat signatures corresponding to the distortion patterns. This confirms these are solid, physical objects generating or retaining heat, not optical illusions or atmospheric tricks.
You mentioned infrared photographs. Where did those come from?
This is where the story becomes more troubling. Yesterday, I received a classified military document through a source I cannot name. The document is marked top secret and contains analysis from military intelligence regarding these aerial phenomena.
Can you tell us what it says?
I can, and I will, despite the risks. The document states, and I'm reading directly, infrared camera systems deployed by reconnaissance aircraft have detected thermal signatures corresponding to atmospheric distortion patterns observed in weather balloon photography. Signature analysis indicates objects of substantial mass maintaining position at altitudes between 30,000 and 55,000 feet. Distribution pattern suggests coordinated positioning rather than random occurrence. The document continues. Count as of November 28, 1947, 24 distinct thermal signatures detected over continental United States, objects arranged in grid pattern with approximate spacing of 300 miles. Size estimates based on thermal bloom range from 1 to 3 miles in primary dimension.
24 objects?
24, arranged in a grid covering the entire continental United States. The document's final assessment reads, quote, nature and origin of objects unknown. Technology demonstrated exceeds known capabilities by indeterminate margin. Preparation for defensive measures assessed as inadequate, end quote. That last phrase is chilling. Preparation for defensive measures inadequate. Our military, with all its wartime experience and technological advancement, has concluded it cannot adequately defend against whatever these objects represent.
We reached out to the War Department for comment on this document. They held an emergency press conference this afternoon.
The War Department is aware of speculation regarding alleged objects in American airspace. While we cannot confirm the authenticity of any purported classified documents, I can state the following. The military conducts routine atmospheric monitoring as part of weather observation and scientific research. Photographic anomalies are not uncommon in high-altitude photography and can result from lens distortions, ice crystal formations, temperature inversions, and various atmospheric phenomena. Regarding infrared imaging, such technology is employed in various military applications. However, any analysis derived from such imaging would be properly classified and not subject to public discussion.
When pressed specifically about whether large objects exist in our atmosphere, the spokesman became defensive.
We cannot confirm or deny the existence of any specific intelligence regarding aerial phenomena. What I can tell you is that American airspace remains secure, that our defense capabilities are robust, and that there is no evidence of any immediate threat to national security.
Notably, the spokesman did not deny the presence of objects. He said there's no evidence of immediate threat. Those are very different statements.
That's precisely what concerns me. The non-denial denial, the careful language designed to avoid lying while also avoiding truth. If these objects don't exist, why not simply say so? The scientific evidence is clear. Photographic documentation from multiple independent sources shows the same patterns. Infrared imaging confirms heat signatures. The military's own classified assessment acknowledges objects of unknown origin with capabilities exceeding our technology. We are being observed, studied, perhaps evaluated, and our government knows it, but refuses to inform the public.
What should people do with this information?
Document everything. Photograph what you see, record your experiences, connect with others who've witnessed similar phenomena. The more evidence we gather, the harder it becomes for authorities to dismiss or suppress. And most importantly, demand answers. We live in a democracy. Citizens have a right to know if our planet is host to visitors from elsewhere. That's not a question of national security classification. That's a question of human survival.
Professor Armstrong, we appreciate your courage in speaking out.
The courage belongs to those who've been reporting these experiences for months while being called liars and lunatics. I'm simply acknowledging what the data has been showing all along. We are not alone. That's it.
That was Professor Michael Armstrong of the University of New Mexico. The War Department has announced that scientists involved in unauthorized disclosure of classified information may face prosecution. Several physicists who've spoken publicly about these phenomena report being warned to cease their public commentary. We'll continue following this story. In other news tonight, Britain has announced plans for Indian independence. This is Sam Spade. Good night. Wayland Industries, building America's future since 1923. From steel foundries to precision manufacturing, we're proud to support the war effort and peacetime prosperity. Our newest facility in Montana employs over 2,000 workers producing components for industries nationwide. Wayland Industries, building better, building tomorrow. Ask your contractor about Wayland Structural Steel, the foundation of progress.
We interrupt this program for an official statement from the War Department and the Federal Bureau of Investigation. This bulletin is being broadcast simultaneously on all networks nationwide.
The following joint statement is issued by the War Department and the Federal Bureau of Investigation, December 5th, 1947, 3 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The War Department and Federal Bureau of Investigation have been monitoring recent public speculation regarding alleged aerial phenomena, regarding photographic evidence. Weather observation equipment has captured images showing atmospheric distortions at high altitude. Qualified experts confirm these result from temperature inversions, ice crystal formations, and air density variations. These are optical phenomena, natural and explainable. Regarding witness testimony, the FBI has investigated hundreds of reports over the past 6 months. Our investigations consistently reveal conventional explanations: aircraft under unusual lighting conditions, weather balloons and research equipment, natural phenomena including meteors and atmospheric electrical discharge. In some cases, deliberate hoaxes. We do not question witness sincerity. Human perception has inherent limitations. When confronted with unfamiliar stimuli, especially at night or distance, the mind interprets ambiguous data incorrectly. What appears extraordinary often has mundane explanation upon investigation. Regarding alleged non-human visitors, the FBI is investigating individuals impersonating federal officials at broadcast facilities. This is criminal fraud. We possess no evidence suggesting these individuals represent anything other than criminals. Speculation about non-human origin is unfounded and irresponsible. Regarding national security, the War Department maintains constant vigilance through extensive radar networks and fighter interceptor forces. No unauthorized incursion has penetrated our defenses. Our airspace remains secure. If objects of unknown origin occupied our atmosphere, our military would have detected them, intercepted them, and taken appropriate action. The absence of such action provides clear indication that no such objects exist. Scientists who possess security clearances are reminded of their legal obligations. Unauthorized disclosure of classified material constitutes a federal crime punishable by imprisonment. We call upon news organizations to exercise appropriate editorial judgment. Sensational claims based on unverified testimony serve only to spread unnecessary alarm. Responsible journalism requires verification and consultation with qualified experts. Those who deliberately spread false information, who fabricate evidence, who encourage public panic through irresponsible speculation, should understand their actions may have legal consequences. Disinformation serves our adversaries' interests. In conclusion, the War Department and FBI have thoroughly investigated reports of aerial phenomena. We have found no evidence requiring alarm. We have identified conventional explanations for all reported observations. We maintain complete vigilance and capability to defend American airspace. At this time, we see no evidence justifying public concern. The American people can rest assured that their government remains watchful, capable, and honest. End of joint statement.
That was an official joint statement from the War Department and the Federal Bureau of Investigation. We now return you to your regularly scheduled programming.
This is an emergency broadcast. This is Sam Spade at WXYZ, Albuquerque. We are interrupting all programming to bring you breaking news of extraordinary significance. Within the past hour, military radar installations worldwide have detected massive aerial signatures appearing simultaneously across the globe. The objects, and I use that word deliberately because our military confirms these are solid, physical objects, have appeared over every major population center, every coastline, every military installation of significance. This is not a drill. This is not speculation. This is confirmed by military sources in the United States, Britain, France, the Soviet Union, and nations around the world. We are going directly to our sources at the Pentagon. Joining us by telephone is a radar operator who has agreed to speak on condition of anonymity. Can you describe what you're seeing on your screens?
I've been operating radar for 3 years. Never seen anything like this. At approximately 4:23 p.m. Eastern Time, our screens lit up. I mean lit up. Hundreds of returns appearing simultaneously, not gradually, simultaneously. Each return is massive, larger than anything we've ever tracked. They're holding fixed positions over major cities, over military bases, over strategic locations. Washington has one directly overhead. New York has 3. Los Angeles, Chicago, San Francisco, all showing returns.
How large are these objects?
Based on radar cross-section, we're talking about objects that are conservatively several miles in dimension. Some of the returns suggest objects 10 or more miles across. It's like entire cities are hovering in our atmosphere.
Are they moving?
No, sir. They appeared and they're just there. Holding position. Perfect formation. It's the formation that's what really gets me. It's a grid. Perfect geometric grid covering the entire planet as far as we can tell.
The entire planet?
We're receiving confirmation from allies worldwide. London radar shows the same thing. Paris, Moscow just confirmed they're seeing it too. Tokyo, Sydney, Mexico City, everywhere with radar capability is reporting the same phenomenon. The whole world is surrounded.
We're now receiving wire service bulletins as they arrive. I'm going to read these as we get them. From London, quote, Royal Air Force confirms massive radar returns over British Isles. Objects visible through cloud cover to visual observers. RAF fighters scrambled but ordered to maintain distance, end quote. From Paris, quote, French military reports objects visible over Paris and major cities. Government officials evacuating to secure locations, end quote. From Moscow, this is extraordinary. Quote, Soviet news agency confirms detection of unknown aerial formations. Military forces mobilizing nationwide, end quote. From Sydney, quote, signatures detected over Pacific. Objects visible to naked eye through atmospheric distortion effects. Estimated size exceeds largest ships ever constructed, end quote. From Mexico City, quote, objects visible through clouds. Population reports seeing enormous shapes overhead, panic spreading through downtown districts, end quote. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know how else to say this. The entire planet appears to be under observation by objects of unknown origin and unprecedented scale. And there's something else. All radio frequencies are being affected. There's a carrier wave, a tone, appearing on every frequency simultaneously. Ham radio operators describe it as a pulsing harmonic, like a heartbeat. You can hear it in our broadcast right now. That low tone underneath my voice, that's not coming from our equipment. That's coming from everywhere.
Sam, this is Professor Armstrong. Can you hear me?
Professor, yes. What's your assessment?
The coordination alone proves intelligence. For objects to appear simultaneously worldwide requires communication and coordination operating at speeds exceeding anything in our current understanding. The formation pattern suggests deliberate positioning rather than random occurrence. This is not natural phenomena. This is not atmospheric effect. This is technology demonstrating capabilities centuries or millennia beyond our own. The signal you're hearing, that tone on all frequencies, that's not interference. That's communication or preparation, like a countdown.
Countdown to what?
I don't know. God help us. I don't know.
We're receiving an official statement from the War Department. Stand by.
The War Department confirms detection of unidentified aerial phenomena at multiple locations worldwide. We are tracking these objects and coordinating with military forces globally. All military installations have been placed on highest alert status. We do not have definitive identification of these objects at this time. We are attempting to establish communication protocols. Citizens are advised to remain calm, stay indoors, and await further instructions. I repeat, remain calm and stay indoors.
When pressed about the nature of these objects, the spokesman paused for a long moment, then said something extraordinary.
We do not have definitive identification, but what we can say is this. The objects demonstrate capabilities and coordination that exceed known technology by an incalculable margin. Whether these represent, whether they are, I cannot speculate at this time. Military forces are mobilized. But, and I must be honest with the American people, if these objects mean us harm, our defensive capabilities may be inadequate to the challenge.
Ladies and gentlemen, a high-ranking government official has just acknowledged on the record that our military may be unable to defend against these objects. This represents the first time any government authority has admitted the potential inadequacy of our defenses. The signal tone is growing stronger. Radio operators worldwide report the same phenomenon. The pulse is, it's becoming audible even without radio equipment. Some people report feeling it, a pressure in the chest, a vibration in the air itself. We're going to stay on air as long as we're able. We'll bring you updates as they become available. In the meantime, follow official instructions. Stay with family. Stay informed. This is Sam Spade. Stand by. Prospectors and mining companies don't dig blind. Riddick Mining Survey provides professional geological assessments using the latest scientific methods, core sampling, mineral identification, and water table analysis. Our experts have 20 years combined experience throughout the Southwest. Riddick Survey. We see what others miss. Offices in Tucson and Flagstaff, Arizona. Write for rates and references or call Tucson 86543.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is the final chapter of The House on Blackwood Hill, a story that began with curiosity and ends with revelation, a story about waiting and what waits in the darkness. Tonight, we learn what the house was built to contain. Edward spent 2 days in the town library, reading everything he could find about Blackwood Hill. The earliest records, from 1697, when the first European settlers arrived. They'd found the hill already cleared. A perfect circle, 200 feet across, where no trees grew and no grass would take root. The native people avoided it absolutely, called it cursed ground, said it was where the dead gathered. In 1703, a church was built there. It burned down after 3 weeks. The pastor had gone mad, claiming he heard voices in the walls, but the building itself was trying to speak to him. In 1742, another attempt. A meeting house. It stood for 6 months before everyone inside disappeared one October night. 23 people gone. The building was found locked from the inside. Tables still set for dinner. Food uneaten, as though they'd all stood up mid-meal and simply ceased to exist. After that, the hill stood empty for 80 years. Until 1822, when Thaddeus Blackwood bought the land. Blackwood was a wealthy industrialist who'd lost his entire family to cholera. Wife, 3 children, parents, siblings. 14 people dead in the span of 3 weeks. The Historical Society had his letters. Edward read them with growing horror. Blackwood hadn't wanted to build a house. He'd wanted to build a prison, a cage. He'd consulted with spiritualists, mediums, practitioners of what he called the old sciences. They all told him the same thing. Blackwood Hill was a thin place, a place where the barrier between worlds had worn tissue thin, where something waited to break through. His house was designed to contain it. Every angle calculated. every door placed with precision. The tower, the sealed attic, the arrangements of rooms, all of it was meant to create a binding. But Blackwood made a mistake. He thought he was building a cage to keep something out. What he actually built was a gathering place, a beacon, the house called to the dead. Edward found Blackwood's final letter, written to his lawyer 3 days before his own disappearance. The house is complete, and I begin to understand my error. I thought I was building a memorial to my lost family, but the house has other purposes. At night, I hear them calling to me. My wife, my children, they're here, they say, waiting in the attic, waiting for me to join them. The house showed me, last night, showed me what waits in the darkness between the walls. Not my family, never my family. Something that wears their voices like masks. Something that has been waiting since before time had a name. And now I've built it a temple. Edward closed the letter, looked at his watch. 5:37 p.m., 9 hours and 40 minutes until 3:17 a.m. He should have left then, driven away and never returned. But there was one more thing he needed to know. Back at the house, he descended to the cellar. His uncle's journal had mentioned it once. A single line. The foundation goes deeper than any house should need. Edward broke through the cellar floor, found stone stairs descending into the earth. Down, down, down. At the bottom, he found a chamber. Natural, not excavated. A cavity in the bedrock, 20 feet across. Walls smooth as glass. And in the center, arranged in a perfect circle, 27 stones, standing upright, each one carved with a name and a date. The names of everyone who disappeared from the house. The stones were warm to the touch. And from somewhere below, from deep in the earth, Edward heard it. A sound like breathing. Slow, patient, endless. The thing beneath Blackwood Hill was not a ghost. It was something older. Something that existed before ghosts were even possible. Something that had been sleeping in the earth since before humanity learned to fear the dark. And the house, all those lost people, they weren't imprisoned. They were offerings, fuel. Every 3 years, the house called someone, and they joined the circle, and their lives fed the thing below, keeping it asleep, keeping it contained. Edward ran, led up the stairs, through the house, out the front door, reached his car just as the sun was setting. He should have driven away, should have escaped while he still could. But as he put his hand on the car door, he stopped, because he understood now. Understood why his uncle had stayed, why all of them had stayed. If the house didn't have its offering, if the circle remained incomplete, the thing below would wake. Edward looked back at the house. 3 stories of gray wood against the darkening sky. In the attic window, he saw them, 27 shadows, watching, waiting, and below, in the earth, something stirred. Edward Marsh walked back into the house, climbed the stairs, opened the attic door. The 27 shadows sat in their circle, silent, patient. And at the edge of the circle, one chair stood empty, waiting. The house always takes its due, his uncle's shadow whispered. Every 3 years, someone must stay. Someone must join the circle. Someone must keep the vigil, or what sleeps below will wake, and all the world will become a hollow place. Edward sat in the empty chair, faced the center of the circle, placed his hands on the armrests, and waited. At 3:17 a.m., the silence came. And in that silence, Edward felt it. The thing below, pressing against the foundation of the world, ancient and patient and eternally hungry, but contained. For now, for another 3 years, until the next offering came. And so our tale ends, ladies and gentlemen. The house on Blackwood Hill stands tonight, as it has stood for over a century. 28 chairs in a circle now. 28 shadows keeping vigil. And in 3 years, when the next heir inherits the property, the house will send its summons, and the cycle will continue. Because some prisons are not meant to be empty. Some vigils are never finished. And some houses, once built, can never be torn down. Sleep well tonight, if you can. And if you should inherit an old house from an uncle you never knew, and find a note begging you never to visit, perhaps it's best to listen. Good night, ladies and gentlemen, and may you never hear the footsteps pacing above you in the dark.
Escape the city crowds. Hadley's Hope Homesteads offers modern ranch homes on spacious lots just 40 miles outside Albuquerque. 3 bedrooms, full bathroom, modern kitchen with electric range, well water, septic system, and room for livestock. Perfect for families seeking fresh air and wide open spaces. Hadley's Hope. Build your future in New Mexico. Weekend tours available. Call Trinity 6-4923. Ladies and gentlemen, we interrupt our broadcast. We take you now to Washington, where the President of the United States is about to address the nation. This is an emergency transmission.
My fellow Americans and my fellow citizens of the world, I'm speaking to you tonight from the White House at what may be the most important moment in human history. Now, I'm not much for fancy speeches. I'm a plain man from Missouri, and I believe in giving people the straight truth. So that's what I'm going to do tonight, even though this truth is harder to tell than any I've faced in my years of public service. For the past 72 hours, you've been watching your skies. You've seen objects appear over your cities, enormous vessels hanging in the air like something out of one of those Buck Rogers serials the kids watch on Saturday afternoons. Except this isn't a serial. This isn't fiction. This is real. I'm here to tell you the truth, the whole truth, and I won't dress it up, and I won't dress it up. We are not alone in this universe. We have never been alone. For months, possibly years, beings from somewhere beyond this earth have been watching us, studying us. Their vessels have been in our skies, hidden by technology we don't understand. That concealment is ending tonight. They're showing themselves now, and I suspect they have their reasons. Now I owe you folks an explanation about what your government has known, and when we knew it. Since the summer of 1947, we've had evidence. We recovered wreckage in New Mexico. We documented encounters. We tracked objects on radar that moved in ways no airplane could move. And we made the decision, along with other governments around the world, to keep this information from the public. We told ourselves we were protecting you, that revealing this truth would cause panic, that people would react like they did to that War of the Worlds radio broadcast back in '38. Remember that? Folks running into the streets thinking Martians had landed. Well, we were wrong to hide it. We were wrong to lie. People came forward with stories. Honest, decent Americans who saw something they couldn't explain, who experienced something that changed their lives. And what did we do? We called them confused. We called them mistaken. Some folks even called them crazy. To every person we dismissed, every witness we didn't believe, I apologize. You deserved better from your government. You deserved the truth. Now let me tell you what we know for certain. These craft, these vessels, they've been here since at least 1897. People have been taken aboard them, examined, returned with devices implanted in their bodies. We don't know why. We don't understand the purpose. The technology they possess makes our most advanced equipment look like a Model T compared to a Cadillac. No, worse than that, like a covered wagon compared to a B-29. Are we specimens to them? Are we being tested? Are they preparing for something? I don't know. Now, about our current situation. Our military is at full alert. Every base, every ship, every airfield. We've tried to communicate with these visitors. We've sent signals. We've attempted to show we're willing to talk. Nothing. No response. I have to be straight with you about our defense capabilities. Our weapons were designed to fight Germany and Japan. They were designed to counter the Soviet Union if it came to that. They were not designed for this. If these beings mean us harm, we are outmatched. That's just the plain truth. But here's what I know about the American people, and about people everywhere. We don't give up. We faced down the Depression. We won the greatest war in history. Not because we had the biggest guns, though that helped, but because we stood together. I've been in contact with leaders around the world tonight. Stalin, Attlee, Chiang Kai-shek. Men I've negotiated with, argued with, opposed on a dozen different issues. Tonight, none of that matters. We're all human beings on this earth, and we're facing something bigger than our squabbles. You remember that picture, The Best Years of Our Lives? Came out last year, about soldiers coming home, trying to find their place in a world that had changed. Well, the world is changing again tonight, changing in ways we never imagined, and we're all going to have to find our way through it together. I'm asking you to stay calm, stay with your families, follow the instructions from local authorities. If you see these beings, don't do anything to provoke them. We don't know their intentions yet. I won't make you promises I can't keep. I won't tell you everything's going to be fine when I don't know if it will be. What I can tell you is this: we're going to face whatever comes with our eyes open and our heads held high. We're Americans. We're human beings. We've been knocked down before, and we've gotten back up. Tonight might be the biggest test we've ever faced. But I believe in us. I believe in our capacity to endure, to adapt, to survive. Whatever happens in the hours ahead, we face it together, not as Democrats or Republicans, not as Americans or Europeans or Asians, as one species, one world, one family. May God watch over us all, and may we prove worthy of His protection. Good night, and God bless America.
That was the President speaking from the White House. The time is 9:43 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We return now to our continuing coverage.
Brothers and sisters, the seals are breaking. What was written 2,000 years ago by the Apostle John on the Isle of Patmos is unfolding before our eyes this very night. What was prophecy is now reality. What was promised has come to pass. For generations, theologians debated whether the book of Revelations was literal or symbolic, whether John's visions were allegory, metaphor for spiritual truths, or actual events yet to come. Tonight, we have our answer. They were not metaphor. They were warning. Turn with me, if you have your Bibles, to Revelations chapter 12, verses 7 through 9. And there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels, and prevailed not. Neither was their place found any more in heaven. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent, called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. Cast out into the earth, not sent to some distant hell, not consigned to the pit, but cast down here into our world in vessels that cross the heavens. What did John see in his vision? He saw beings descending from the sky. He saw them arrive in craft beyond his ability to describe. And 2,000 years later, we see them too. Some will tell you these are visitors from distant stars, explorers, scientists, beings of advanced intelligence coming in peace. Do not be deceived. The enemy wears many masks, speaks with many voices, and his greatest weapon has always been deception. 2 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 14. Satan himself is transformed into an angel of light. They will come to you with words of peace. They will offer knowledge, technology, advancement. They will promise to elevate humanity, to guide us to a new age. It is a lie, every word. These are not explorers from other worlds. They are the principalities and powers that the Apostle Paul warned us about. The rulers of the darkness of this world, spiritual wickedness in high places, but manifesting now in physical form. The great deception that Jesus himself prophesied in Matthew chapter 24. For there shall arise false Christ and false prophets, and shall show great signs and wonders, insomuch that, if it were possible, they shall deceive the very elect. What greater sign, what greater wonder, than beings descending from the heavens in craft of impossible design? What more convincing deception than to claim they come from the stars rather than from the pit? And look at what they have done. They have taken our people in the night, violated their bodies, placed marks upon them. Does this sound like the work of benevolent explorers, or does it sound like the mark of the beast, that sign that Revelations warned would be placed upon mankind in the final days? They have studied us like animals, examined us, catalogued us, not as equals, but as lesser beings to be experimented upon. This is the enemy, revealed at last in his true form. Our government has lied to us, yes, but their lie was born of fear, born of not understanding what they faced. Now they confess, now they admit, but their confession comes too late, for the time of preparation has passed. We are in the final days, brothers and sisters. Make no mistake, the tribulation is upon us, but hear this, and hear it well. We have been given warning. We have been shown what comes, and we have been given instruction on how to stand. Ephesians chapter 6, verses 11 and 12. Put on the whole armor of God, that ye may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world. This is not a battle of ships and weapons. This is not a war that can be won with missiles and armies. This is spiritual warfare, and the only armor that will protect you is faith in the Almighty God. They will come to you with promises. Do not listen. They will offer you safety in exchange for obedience. Do not bow. They will show you wonders that defy explanation. Do not worship. For though they appear mighty, though they command forces that make our weapons look like children's toys, they are still fallen creatures. They are still bound by the will of the Almighty, and their time is short. Revelations chapter 12, verse 12, Woe to the inhabitants of the earth, for the devil is come down unto you, having great wrath, because he knoweth that he hath but a short time. They know their time is ending. That is why they reveal themselves now. That is why the masquerade is over, because the final act is beginning, and when it concludes, their power will be broken forever. Yes, we may suffer. Yes, we may face tribulation. The Bible does not promise us escape from hardship, but it promises us something greater. It promises us victory. Revelations chapter 21, verse 1. And I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth were passed away. This world may tremble, it may shake, it may seem to fall apart, but beyond the darkness lies the dawn. Beyond the tribulation lies the promise. And those who stand firm in their faith, those who refuse to bow to the deceiver, will see that promise fulfilled. So I say to you tonight, do not fear them. Yes, they are powerful. Yes, they are terrible to behold, but they are not God. They were cast out of heaven once, and they will be cast out again. Stand firm, hold fast to your faith, put on the armor of God, and do not remove it. For though the heavens themselves seem to fall, though creatures from the abyss walk among us, the Lord God Almighty still reigns. The book has been opened. The seals are broken. The time is at hand. Come quickly, Lord Jesus. Come quickly.
When your cargo absolutely must arrive on time, trust Nostromo Freight Lines. Our drivers traverse the nation's highways, delivering goods from sea to shining sea. Refrigerated trucks available for perishable items. No load too large. No destination too remote. Nostromo Freight, reliable as the sunrise. Call Klondike 5, 7000 for rates, or visit our terminal on Highway 66. This is WXYZ, Albuquerque. Hour 72 of continuous coverage. I'm Sam Spade with breaking developments from around the world. Reports continue to arrive via telegraph and telephone from stations worldwide. We're receiving confirmation from multiple sources that the atmospheric distortions documented over the past 5 months are now visible to the naked eye. From New York City, correspondent reports shimmer solidifying over harbor, object now visible without instruments, estimated size several miles in diameter. From Los Angeles, downtown correspondent describes object visible from ground level, covers substantial portion of visible sky. Traffic has come to a complete standstill as residents observe phenomenon. From Chicago, station WGN reports entire metropolitan area beneath single massive object. Correspondent describes metallic surface now clearly visible. Estimated coverage area over 100 square miles. The signal pulse previously detectable only on specialized equipment is now audible on standard radio receivers. Technical staff confirms presence on all broadcast frequencies. Rhythmic pattern continues at approximately 0.75 hertz. Washington reports military aircraft dispatched to investigate objects. All pilots report engine malfunction at distance. No craft able to approach within 2 miles of objects. Pentagon confirms inability to engage targets. From London, British Broadcasting Corporation reports objects visible across United Kingdom. Prime Minister Churchill's address broadcast 1 hour ago. Royal Air Force confirms radar contacts numbering in the hundreds across European airspace. Tokyo station NHK reports object over city described as larger than any known structure. Japanese Imperial forces mobilized but holding position. International coordination established between Allied and Soviet commands. Moscow radio confirms objects detected over Soviet territory. Kremlin statement acknowledges presence of unidentified craft. First official Soviet admission of phenomenon. Pattern emerging from global reports indicates objects positioned over every major population center worldwide. Additional concentrations reported over military installations, coastal areas, and strategic locations. The concealment or camouflage previously hiding these objects appears to have been deactivated. From Kansas, multiple objects visible across farmland. Correspondent estimates dozens in formation. Objects maintaining stationary positions. We're receiving reports of communication interference affecting multiple systems. Telegraph operators report increasing difficulty maintaining connections. Telephone switching stations experiencing unprecedented signal degradation. Confirmation from station personnel, object now visible over Albuquerque metropolitan area. Station engineer reports visual confirmation from building roof. Object estimated to cover area from downtown district to eastern Mesa. Additional reports arriving. New York describes object as possessing smooth metallic surface with illuminated patterns. Los Angeles correspondent reports similar observations. Pattern of lights described as moving across surface in organized fashion. All previous government statements regarding atmospheric phenomena and unidentified objects are now contradicted by observable evidence. What was denied for 5 months is now visible to millions of witnesses simultaneously. Telegraph communication from Washington indicates President's emergency address concluded approximately 1 hour ago. Full transcript available via wire service. Official acknowledgement of extraterrestrial origin confirmed. Follow-up transmission from Washington reports continued attempts to establish communication with objects. All attempts unsuccessful. No response received to any signal transmitted. Washington transmission has ceased. Station off air. New York reports smaller craft observed descending from main object. Ground level activity reported in multiple boroughs. Police and military forces responding. Details unclear. Los Angeles station reports similar activity. Beams of light observed from descending craft. Military units dispatched to locations. Communication with field units interrupted. Los Angeles transmission has ceased. Station off air. Reports from rural areas describe craft over agricultural regions. Multiple witnesses report beams projecting from craft to ground. Livestock and individuals observed in proximity to beam locations. Detailed information unavailable. Telegraph and telephone networks experiencing cascading failure. Remote stations going silent in sequence. East Coast stations no longer responding. Midwest connectivity dropping. This station may be among final broadcasts still operational. Technical staff confirms power and equipment remain functional. Signal transmission continues. To listeners still receiving this broadcast, documentation of these events remains critical. Record all observations. Maintain written accounts. Evidence must be preserved. 5 months ago, initial reports described radio interference patterns across the Southwest. Scientific curiosity, unexplained phenomenon. The progression from those first reports to current global revelation represents the most significant development in human history. The objects are no longer concealed. The observation period appears to have concluded. What follows remains unknown. Signal interference increasing across all bands. Telegraph connections to remaining stations deteriorating. Telephone trunk lines experiencing complete failure. Final reports indicate activity worldwide. No region unaffected. No population center without observable craft overhead. This station will continue transmission as long as equipment remains operational and power supply continues. To any station still broadcasting, coordinate information through available channels. Share all observational data. Document everything. Signal degradation approaching critical levels. Electromagnetic interference affecting all frequencies. If this transmission ceases, attempt to receive broadcasts from alternate stations. If no broadcasts remain, maintain ground-level observation and documentation. The concealment has ended. The observation phase has concluded. What comes next? Signal pulse increasing in amplitude. Electromagnetic interference reaching maximum levels. Multiple systems failing simultaneously. All remote connections lost. This is WXYZ, Albuquerque, maintaining broadcast until...
This is a recorded emergency message from the United States Civil Defense Authority. This message will repeat continuously on all available frequencies. All citizens are advised to remain in their homes. Do not attempt to travel. Do not congregate in public spaces. Maintain shelter in place until further instruction. Communication networks have experienced widespread failure. Telephone service is unavailable in most areas. Telegraph systems are non-functional. Radio broadcast capability is limited to this emergency transmission. Military and civil defense forces are responding to the current situation. Federal, state, and local authorities are coordinating emergency procedures. Citizens should follow all instructions from local officials. The following information is provided for public safety. Objects of unknown origin have been detected over multiple locations. These objects have demonstrated capabilities beyond current understanding. Do not approach these objects. Do not attempt to signal or communicate with these objects. Maintain distance of at least 2 miles where possible. If you observe beams of light projecting from these objects, seek shelter immediately. Do not remain in direct line of sight. Move to interior rooms. Close all windows and doors. Remain sheltered until phenomenon ceases. Reports indicate that individuals in proximity to light beams have experienced paralysis and disorientation. Some individuals have not been recovered. Exercise extreme caution. Water supplies in most areas remain functional. Ration water appropriately. Electrical power is intermittent. Conserve power where available. Food supplies should be rationed for extended duration. The federal government remains operational. Continuity of government protocols are in effect. Presidential authority has been transferred to designated secure location. Constitutional procedures remain in force. Attempts to establish communication with the unidentified objects are ongoing. No response has been received at this time. International coordination continues through available channels. Citizens are reminded that spreading panic or false information is subject to federal penalties. Remain calm. Remain in place. Await further instruction. This is an emergency broadcast. This message will repeat. Do not leave shelter unless absolutely necessary. Do not approach unidentified objects. Do not interfere with military or civil defense operations. Help is being organized. Rescue operations will commence when safe to do so. Maintain your position. Conserve resources. This message is broadcast on all frequencies by authority of the United States government. Similar messages are being broadcast by governments worldwide. Remain calm. Remain sheltered. Await instruction. This message will now repeat. This is a recorded emergency message from the United States Civil Defense Authority. This message will repeat continuously on all available frequencies. All citizens are advised to remain in their homes. Do not attempt to travel. Do not congregate in public spaces.
CQ. This is K7XRT calling on 20 meters. Is anyone out there? Any station? Any frequency? Please respond. This is K7XRT. Over. CQ. K7XRT calling. I've been broadcasting for 3 weeks now. Haven't heard another voice since it happened. If anyone can hear this, please respond. Over.
K7XRT. This is W2MBL. I read you. Barely, but I read you. Over.
Well, I'm 2MBL. Thank God. I thought I was the only one left. What's your location? Over?
Pennsylvania. Small town. Mountains. About 40 miles from Pittsburgh. You? Over.
Colorado. Rockies. How many are with you? Over.
Just me now. There were others, but the lights came 3 nights ago. I was in my basement with the radio. When I came up, they were gone. All of them. Over.
Same here. My family went into town 2 weeks back. Never came home. Town's empty now. Cars in the streets. Doors open. Food still on tables. But no people. Over.
Have you seen them? The ships? Over?
Every night. Dozens of them. They don't hide anymore. Just hang there in the sky, watching. Sometimes the beams come down. I stay underground when that happens. Over.
Smart. I tried to reach other hands. Been calling every frequency I can reach. You're the first response in 11 days. Over.
11 days. I haven't heard any voice in 3 weeks. No radio. No nothing. It's like the whole world just stopped. Over.
The broadcast ended January 13th. I was listening when they went off the air. All of them. All at once. That pulse, that electromagnetic pulse, fried most equipment. I had my rig in a Faraday cage. Lucky. Over.
Same. Old military surplus setup. Shielded. Only reason I can transmit. Have you heard anything from the government? Emergency broadcasts? Anything. Over.
There was an automated message for the first week. Civil defense recording. Instructions to stay sheltered. It stopped 5 days ago. Nothing since. Over. Over.
So we're on our own. Over.
Looks that way. What's your plan? Over.
Stay underground during the day. Keep broadcasting. Hope someone else is out there listening. You?
Same. And document everything. I've been keeping a log. Dates, times, what I see. Somebody has to keep a record. Over.
Yeah. Somebody has to remember. Listen, can we establish a schedule? Same time every day, so we know we're not alone. Over.
1800 hours Zoom? I can be on frequency. Over.
1800 hours? I'll be here, and if you don't hear from me, if I stop transmitting, over.
I'll keep broadcasting. I'll keep calling. Someone else might be listening.
Thank you. It's good to hear another voice. Even if it's just for now. W2MBL, this is K7XRT. I'll be listening tomorrow. 1800 hours. Stay safe. Over and out.
K7XRT. Stay safe. W2MBL clear.
In January of 1948, the world as humanity knew it came to an end. What began months earlier as unexplained radio interference in the American Southwest escalated through a series of events that would challenge every assumption about our place in the universe. Reports dismissed as weather phenomena, witnesses labeled as unreliable, government denials issued with certainty. All of it proven false. On the night of January 13th, 72 hours into continuous global crisis, the concealment ended. Objects that had remained hidden in our skies for months, possibly years, revealed themselves simultaneously over every major population center on Earth. Radio broadcasts from that final night capture the moment of revelation. Professional journalists, maintaining their duty to the last, documented what they witnessed. Cities covered by craft measuring miles in diameter, atmospheric shimmers solidifying into metallic surfaces, the systematic failure of communication networks worldwide. At approximately 3:27 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, all radio transmissions ceased. Telegraph lines went silent. Telephone networks collapsed. A massive electromagnetic pulse, generated by unknown means, terminated every broadcast simultaneously. What followed remains unclear. In the days after the silence, those in remote areas reported seeing lights over cities, beams projecting from the craft to the ground. Entire populations gone. Streets empty, buildings intact but abandoned, as though millions of people had simply ceased to exist. Military forces, mobilized but unable to engage, found their bases surrounded. equipment malfunction, weapons failed, communications remained dead. Government continuity plans, developed over decades for every conceivable crisis, proved inadequate for this one. The recordings you have heard, preserved through means we do not fully understand, represent the last coordinated communication from an organized civilization. The voices of journalists, scientists, government officials, and ordinary citizens, all attempting to comprehend the incomprehensible. They documented what they could. They broadcast until the equipment failed. They maintained their duty in the face of the unknown. These recordings are all that remains of those final days, a testament to those who witnessed, who reported, who refused to stop speaking truth, even as their world ended around them. The transmission from Albuquerque, station WXYZ, was among the last to fall silent. The fate of its staff, like the fate of millions, remains unknown. What happened to humanity after the silence, we cannot say with certainty. But the broadcasts endure. A record of the moment when we learned, finally and irrevocably, that we were not alone in the universe. This concludes our historical examination of the broadcasts from 1947 to 1948.